Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a wild ride. What if you woke up in medieval times? Picture this. You're sprawled in a lumpy straw bed, the air thick with the stench of mud, and something suspiciously like livestock. A rooster's screeching like it's auditioning for a heavy metal band, and your blanket's more holes than wool. The year's roughly 1350 somewhere in a grimy English village. One wrong move, and you're probably not surviving this disease, bandits, or a bad turnip could end you. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where you're all chilling. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes snap open, and the first thing you notice is the cold. It's not the, oh, I need a hoodie kind of cold. It's a bone-deep, teeth-chattering chill that makes you wonder if you've been teleported to the Arctic. The room, if you can call it that, is a dim, smoky haze. Walls of wattle and daub, basically sticks, and mud look like they're one strong breeze from collapsing. A tiny window, no glass, just a wooden shutter, lets in slivers of gray dawn. You're lying on a straw mattress, prickly and damp, with a coarse wool blanket that smells like it's been used to mop a barn. You sit up, and something skitters across the dirt floor. A rat, maybe, or worse. Your modern pajamas are gone. Instead, you're in a scratchy tunic that feels like burlap and smells like regret. You swing your legs over the bed, and your bare feet hit the floor, cold, packed earth gritty under your toes. There's no coffee maker, no phone, no electric light to flick on. Just a clay pitcher of water in the corner, cloudy enough to make you rethink hydration. You stumble to the door, a rickety slab of wood, and push it open. The village hits you like a punch, a muddy lane winding past, thatched huts, smoke curling from chimneys, and the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Chickens cluck, pigs snort, and a dog with one ear gives you a suspicious side-eye. People are already moving, men in tunics, hauling buckets, women in long dresses, balancing baskets on their hips. They glance at you, their faces, weathered eyes narrowing like you're an alien. Which, let's be honest, you kind of are. Your stomach growls, but breakfast isn't a granola bar or a quick drive-through. You're in a peasant's world now, and food's a gamble. You spot a woman stirring a pot over an open fire outside a nearby hut. She's probably cooking pottage, a medieval staple, think watery veggie stew with whatever's not rotten. Fun fact, most peasants ate about 2 pounds of bread, daily often coarse and gritty from stone-ground flour. You approach hoping for a bite, but she barks something in a dialect you barely catch. Middle English sounds like Chaucer's drunk cousin slurring through a megaphone. You mime hunger rubbing your stomach, and she snorts, but ladles you a bowl. It's gray, lumpy, and tastes like boiled sadness, but you choke it down. Starvation's not on today's to-do list. As you eat, you notice the village's rhythm. Everyone's got a job, and slacking isn't an option. A guy with a face like old leather is hauling manure to the fields. Kids no older than 10 are herding geese with sticks. You're not sure where you fit in, but standing around looking useless is drawing stares. A quirky tidbit, medieval peasants sometimes used cow dung as a wall sealant. Yep, they smeared poop on their houses for insulation. You glance at your hut's walls and pray that's not what's holding them up. Historians still argue whether this was common or just a desperate last resort in poorer villages. Either way, you're not volunteering to test it. You decide to explore, picking your way down the muddy lane. The smell's a mix of smoke animal funk and something you hope is just rotting cabbage. Every step squelches, and your feet are already caked in grime. You pass a communal well, where a girl's cranking a bucket up with a rope. She's maybe 12, but her hands are calloused like a construction worker's. You offer a smile. She stares back like you just insulted her goat. Tough crowd. You keep moving, dodging a cart pulled by an ox that looks as thrilled as you are to be here. The village isn't big, maybe 30 huts, a stone church with a stubby tower, and a manor house looming on a hill. That's where the Lord lives, the guy who owns everything, including technically you. You're starting to grasp the stakes. This is feudalism 101. The Lord gives land, peasants work it, and everyone prays the harvest doesn't flop. One bad season, and it's famine city. You're no knight or noble, so you're stuck at the bottom, a serf tied to the land. Freedom's a fairy tale here. Want to run? Good luck, there's nowhere to go, and the Lord's men will drag you back. You're not loving the vibe, but you've got to blend in, or risk standing out. Standing out's bad, like accused of witchcraft bad. You've seen enough movies to know that doesn't end well. A man shouts, waving you over. He's stocky, bearded, and holding a pitchfork like it's an extension of his arm. He points to a pile of logs and mimes stacking. Great, you've been drafted. You grab a log heavier than it looks and start hauling. Your arms scream and a splinter jabs your palm. You mutter a modern curse under your breath, and the guy raises an eyebrow. Oops, better keep the 21st century slang in check. You stack logs, sweat beading despite the chill, and realize this is your life now. No Wi-Fi, no showers, just endless manual labor and suspicious neighbors. Joke number 1. At least there's no email to check, right? You'd trade this for a spam folder in a heartbeat. By noon, you're exhausted, and the village is buzzing. A bell rings from the church, signaling midday prayers, or maybe lunch. You're hoping for the latter, but the pitchfork guy's still watching, so you keep stacking. Your hands are blistered, your back staging a protest, and you're pretty sure you smell worse than the pigs. Another joke. If medieval deodorant's a thing, it's probably just a sprig of lavender and a prayer. You're not holding your breath for either. The sun's climbing, but it's still cold, and your tunic's doing a terrible job of keeping you warm. You're starting to miss your old Life Socks toothpaste, the ability to Google how to survive the 14th century. As you work, you overhear snippets of chatter. Someone's worried about bandits on the forest road. Another guy's grumbling about the Lord's latest tax. You're piecing together the village's pulse fear duty and a whole lot of grit. You're not just a time traveler. You're a peasant now stuck in the muck. And this is just day 1. Joke 3. Maybe you'll get promoted to slightly less miserable peasant by next week. For now, you stack another log, wipe the sweat from your brow, and try not to think about what's crawling in your straw bed tonight. You're still reeling from waking up in this medieval mess, your hands raw from stacking logs, and your stomach grumbling louder than the village rooster. The muddy lane stretches before you, and it's time to figure out how to survive as a peasant. The sun's higher now, casting weak light through a sky that's more gray than blue, and the village hums with purpose. Everyone's moving, hauling, weaving, shouting at stray goats, like they've got a script, and you're the only one improvising. Your job for now is to blend in and tackle the daily grind, but it's not like there's a Peasant 101 handbook lying around. You're learning the hard way, one squelching step at a time. You trudge toward the fields where most of the village seems to be headed. The air's damp, carrying a mix of fresh earth and manure that makes your nose wrinkle. Your borrowed tunic, still itchy as a cheap Halloween costume, snags on a thorn as you pass a hedge. You tug it free, wincing, and notice the fabric's already fraying. Great. You're not sure if peasants get a clothing allowance, but you're betting it's a big fat zero. The path opens to a patchwork of fields, striped with furrows and dotted with workers. Men and women, young and old, are bent over digging planting or yanking weeds, with a rhythm that screams experience. You're about as useful as a smartphone in 1350. A woman with a face like a sun-worn map waves you over. She's got a basket of turnip seeds and a no-nonsense glare. She thrusts a handful at you and points to a row of dirt. Sow she grunts her Middle English clipped, but clear enough. You nod, trying to look competent, and kneel in the muck. The soil's cold, clumping under your nails as you dig shallow holes. You drop seeds and cover them, and move on. But your row's crooked, and the woman's already tisking like you've insulted her ancestors. Joke 1, maybe you'll invent the medieval seed planting app, call it So Easy. Too bad there's no Wi-Fi to pitch it. Here's a hard fact. Medieval agriculture was brutal. Most peasants worked from dawn to dusk, using tools that hadn't changed much since Roman times. The three-field system rotating crops to keep soil fertile was standard by the 14th century, boosting yields, but demanding constant labor. You're in one of those fields now, part of a cycle that feeds the village and fills the Lord's granary. Your back's already aching, and you've only been at it for an hour. The woman corrects your technique, showing you how to space the seeds evenly. You mimic her, but your hands fumble, and a few seeds scatter. She sighs, muttering something that sounds suspiciously like useless. You're starting to agree. Then there's the quirky side of this grind. Some peasants believed planting during a full moon ensured better crops, a tidbit that's half superstition, half lunar lore. You glance at the sky, wondering if tonight's moon will save your shoddy work. The woman catches you daydreaming and snaps her fingers, pointing to the next row. You hustle, determined not to be the village slacker. Historians still argue whether these lunar planting rituals were widespread or just regional quirks. Either way, you're not risking a bad harvest to test it. You've got enough problems like the blister forming on your thumb and the fact that your shoes, flimsy leather scraps, are soaking through. As you work, you notice the field's edges are marked by stones, some carved with faded runes. They're boundary markers, but also a reminder of the Lord's grip on this land. Everything you plant, every turnip you pull, owes a cut to him. Taxes come in grain labor, or even your best hin if you're unlucky. You're starting to grasp the peasant's plight. You're not just working to eat, you're working to keep the whole feudal machine running. A boy nearby, maybe 9, is tossing clods at crows trying to steal seeds. He's better at this than you, and he knows it. He smirks, and you resist the urge to chuck a turnip at him. Gotta stay chill, you're the new guy. The day drags on, and your knees are caked in mud. You're learning other chores by watching. A man's repairing a plow, cursing as the wooden blade splinters. Another's herding oxen, coaxing them with a stick, and a patience you don't have. You try to help scatter straw over a muddy patch, but you slip and nearly faceplant. The woman laughs, a rare crack in her stern facade, and you manage a sheepish grin. Joke 2, at least you're providing comic relief. Maybe you'll be the village jester by sundown. You're not sure if that's a promotion or a demotion. By afternoon, your body's screaming for a break, but breaks aren't a thing here. You get a quick drink from a shared water skin, warm, slightly earthy, but you're too thirsty to care. The woman hands you a chunk of bread, dark and chewy with grit that crunches between your teeth. It's not a sandwich, but it's fuel, and you're grateful. You sit on a stump, chewing slowly, and scan the field. Everyone's in sync, a gritty ballet of survival. You're the odd note, the modern interloper who can't tell a turnip from a radish. But you're learning, or at least faking it well enough to avoid a lecture. The quirky tidbit about bread sticks with you. Some peasants mixed sawdust into dough during lean times to stretch flour. You inspect your chunk, hoping it's just flour and water, but you're not asking. The woman's watching, and you don't want to offend her baking skills. You finish eating and get back to work sewing another row. Your technique's improving, but it's still a far cry from the others. The boy's now chasing a runaway pig, shouting words you don't need to translate. You stifle a laugh, then focus. Laughter's a luxury when you're elbow deep in dirt. As the sun dips, the air cools, and the field starts to empty. You're exhausted, your muscles throbbing like you've run a marathon in flip-flops. The woman nods a grudging sign you didn't totally botch the day. You trudge back to the village, mud flaking off your legs. The church bell tolls, signaling evening prayers, or maybe supper. You're hoping for the latter, but you're too tired to care. Joke 3. If this is living the simple life, you'd take a cubicle and bad coffee any day. You're starting to understand the peasant's world, endless work, zero slack, and a lord who's always watching. Tomorrow's another day of this, and you're not sure how you'll keep up. You're bone-tired from yesterday's field work, your hands still gritty with dirt, and that itchy tunic's starting to feel like a personal vendetta. The village wakes with the same relentless energy, roosters crowing, carts creaking, and the ever-present stink of smoke and livestock. You're not sowing seeds today, thank goodness, but you've got a new challenge figuring out who runs this medieval show. The village isn't just a random cluster of huts. It's a tightly knit web of power favors and fear, and you're about to learn where you stand. Spoiler, it's probably at the bottom. You pull on your flimsy shoes, wincing as they rub your blisters, and step into the muddy lane, ready to decode the pecking order. The first thing you notice is the manor house on the hill, its stone walls looming like a grumpy overlord. That's where the lord lives, the guy who owns the land, the crops, and let's be real, you. He's the top dog in this feudal setup, and his word is law. You've heard whispers about him, taxes, punishments, the occasional feast if he's feeling generous. But he's not the one you'll deal with daily. That's the reeve, a sort of middle manager who keeps the village in line. You spot him now, a wiry man with a permanent scowl barking orders at a group of men fixing a fence. He's a peasant like you, but with perks, like a slightly less leaky roof and the power to make your life miserable. You decide to steer clear and observe from a safe distance. The lane's buzzing with activity, and you start picking up on the hierarchy. The blacksmith hammering away in his open forge gets respectful nods from passers-by. His skills are rare, so he's got clout, maybe even a few extra coins. Same goes for the miller, who you see lugging a sack of grain toward the windmill. He's not nobility, but he's not slaving in the fields either. Then there are the free tenants, peasants, who rent land instead of being tied to it like serfs. You overhear one, a woman with a sharp tongue, haggling with a peddler. She's got a bit of swagger, probably, because she can leave the village if she wants. You, a serf, don't have that luxury. You're stuck, and the weight of that sinks in like mud in your shoes. A hard fact, feudalism was the backbone of medieval Europe, with lords granting land to vassals in exchange for loyalty and labor. By 1350, about 80% of England's population were peasants, most bound to their lords. You're one of them, tied to this village like a dog on a leash. Your labor feeds the manor, and in return you get, well, not much. Protection maybe if bandits show up. A roof, if you can call your hut that. You trudge past a group of kids chasing a chicken, and one bumps into you, nearly knocking you into a ditch. You mutter something modern, then catch yourself. Gotta blend in, or you'll be the weirdo everyone whispers about. Speaking of whispers, here's a quirky tidbit. Some villages had a village idiot, a person who, whether genuinely slow or just eccentric, was often fed and sheltered out of communal pity. You spot a guy like that, now sitting on a stump, muttering to a goose, like it's his therapist. Nobody bothers him, but they don't exactly invite him to dinner either. You wonder if you're one bad day from taking his spot. Historians still argue whether these figures were truly disabled or just social outcasts who didn't fit the village mold. Either way, you're not volunteering for the role, but your clumsy attempts at fitting in aren't helping your case. You keep moving, trying to map the social ladder. The church is a big player, literally and figuratively. The priest, a gaunt man in a black robe, is sweeping the church steps. He's not noble, but he's got authority doling out sermons, and more importantly, forgiveness. You've heard he's the one who blesses crops and settles disputes, but he also reports sins to the Lord. Yikes. You give him a wide berth, not ready to confess your 21st century thoughts. Below him are the craftsmen, then the tenants, then you and the other serfs scraping by. At the very bottom are the landless laborers who wander between villages begging for work. You see one now, a thin man with hollow eyes, carrying a bundle of sticks. You're one bad harvest from being him. Joke 1. This hierarchy's so rigid it makes your old office politics look like a love fest. You'd kill for a passive-aggressive email instead of a Reeves whip. You decide to test your place in the pecking order by approaching a group of women weaving baskets near a hut. They're chatting, their fingers flying through reeds, and you try to join in, offering a smile. They pause, sizing you up. One with a scarf tied tight asks what you're doing just standing there. You stammer, saying you want to help, but your hands are about as nimble as a drunk ox. They laugh, not unkindly, and hand you a reed. You fumble, and the scarf woman snorts. Fields more your speed, she says, shooing you off. Ouch. You're definitely low on the totem pole. You retreat stung but curious. The village runs on favors and grudges, and you've got to earn your spot. You try again with a man repairing a cart. He's gruff, but lets you hold the wheel steady while he hammers. You're not great at it, but he doesn't yell, so you count it as a win. He mentions the Lord's latest demand, extra labor to fix the manor's wall. Everyone's grumbling, but nobody dares say no. You nod, pretending you get it, but inside, you're screaming. This is your life now. Endless work. Zero say, and a Reeve who probably hates you already. Joke 2. If medieval HR exists, you're pretty sure you're on the needs improvement list. You're starting to see how gossip fuels the hierarchy. Overhear a wrong word, and you're marked as lazy, or worse, disloyal. You catch snippets as you work someone's mad. The miller's shorting flour, another's scared. The priest saw her skip church. You keep your mouth shut, but your modern brain's itching to spill some tea. Bad idea. You focus on the cart, earning a grunt of approval from the man. Progress, maybe. By afternoon, you're exhausted, just from watching and dodging social landmines. You grab a quick bite more of that gritty bread, plus a slice of hard cheese that tastes like it's been aging since the Crusades. You sit by the well, listening to the village pulse. The reeves still shouting, the blacksmiths still hammering, and the goose guys still goosing. You're low ranking, but you're learning. Joke 3, maybe you'll climb the ladder by inventing the medieval suggestion box. Step 1, suggest indoor plumbing. For now, you finish your cheese, wipe your hands on your tunic, and brace for whatever this village throws at you next. The pecking order's clear: survive, don't sass. And maybe you'll carve out a spot. You're still smarting from your low-rung status in the village hierarchy, your tunic now a patchwork of mud and reed bits from your failed basket-weaving attempt. The morning's crisp, the sky a pale wash of blue, and the village lanes alive with the clatter of carts and the shouts of traders setting up for market day. You've been roped into joining the chaos, tasked with bartering for whatever you can scrounge to keep your hut stocked. No Amazon Prime here, just a muddy square, packed with stalls, haggling peasants, and the occasional runaway pig. You're about to dive into the medieval marketplace, and it's sink or swim. Your empty basket feels heavier than it should, and your confidence is thinner than the broth you choked down at dawn. The market's a sensory overload. Stalls line the square, rickety tables piled with turnips, leeks and wheels of cheese that smell like they've got their own ecosystem. There's a fishmonger waving a trout like it's a trophy, and a baker shouting about bread that's only slightly stale. The air's thick with smoke from a roasting spit, mingling with the tang of unwashed bodies and damp wool. You clutch your basket, dodging a kid chasing a goose through the crowd. Your mission's simple: trade whatever you've got for food or tools. Problem is, you've got nothing but a few eggs you found in your hut, and a questionable talent for small talk. Good luck. You start at a stall run by a woman with a face like a storm cloud. She's got cabbages lumpy and speckled, but they're better than the mystery stew you've been surviving on. You offer your eggs, holding them up like they're gold. She squints, unimpressed, and counters with 1 cabbage for 3 eggs. You hesitate, 3's half your stash, but your stomach's voting yes. You hand them over, and she tosses you a cabbage that feels like a bowling ball. You stuff it in your basket already, wondering if you've been scammed. Joke 1, medieval haggling's like Black Friday, but with more shouting and fewer flat screens. Here's a solid fact. Markets were the heartbeat of medieval villages, often held weekly under the Lord's watchful eye. By the 14th century, they were regulated with officials checking weights and prices to curb cheating, though that didn't stop shady traders. You're learning that now as you move to the next stall, where a man's selling woolen cloth. You need something warmer than your threadbare tunic, but his prices are steep: a yard of rough wool for 6 eggs or a day's labor. You've only got 3 eggs left, and the idea of more work makes your blisters weep. You try charm instead, flashing a grin and asking if he'll take 2 eggs for a scrap. He laughs not kindly and waves you off. So much for your modern charisma. Then there's the quirky side of this chaos. Some traders used lucky charms like a rabbit's foot or a carved bone to draw customers, claiming they'd bring good fortune. You spot one now, a peddler with a table of herbs and trinkets, waving a dried toad on a string. He swears it wards off fever. You're tempted if only to mess with him, but your eggs are too precious. Historians still argue whether these charms were genuine folk beliefs or just clever marketing ploys to fleece desperate peasants. Either way, you're not buying a toad today, but you file it away as a reminder this place runs on hope as much as coin. You weave through the crowd, dodging a cart piled with barrels and a dog that's eyeing your basket like it's lunch. The noise is relentless. Shouts, laughter, the occasional curse when a deal goes sour. You try another stall, this one with apples, small and wormy, but better than nothing. The seller's a boy, maybe 14, with a quick smile and sharper eyes. You offer an egg for 2 apples. He counters with 1 apple, but you lean in, mimicking the haggling you've seen. 2 or I walk, you say, hoping you sound tougher than you feel. He grins, impressed, and hands you 2. Score. You bite into 1 tart and gritty, but it's the best thing you've tasted since you got here. Emboldened, you hit up a baker next. His bread's dark, heavy, and smells like it could double as a doorstop. You've got 2 eggs left, and you're determined to make them count. You offer both for a loaf, but he wants 3. You argue, pointing out the loaf's got a suspicious green spot. He grumbles, but caves, and you walk away with bread that's more brick than bun. You're getting the hang of this, but your basket's still pathetically light, and the market's starting to thin out. The Reeves circling, eyeing everyone like he's waiting for someone to slip up. You keep your head down, remembering your low spot in the village pecking order. Joke 2. If you keep bartering like this, you'll be the village tycoon, or at least own a slightly better cabbage. You try one last stall, a tanner selling leather strips. You need better shoes. Your current ones are basically soggy cardboard. He wants 4 eggs, or a week's work for a pair. You're out of eggs, so you offer to carry his hides to the river tomorrow. He squints, then nods, but you can tell he's skeptical. You're racking up debts faster than a college freshman with a credit card, but you've got no choice. Survival means playing the long game. The market's winding down, and you're exhausted, your arms aching from lugging your basket. You've got a cabbage, 2 apples a loaf, and a promise of shoes if you don't flake on the tanner. You sit on a barrel, munching your second apple, and watch the crowd. A woman's arguing with the fishmonger, waving a trout like a weapon. A kid's trying to sell a handful of wilting herbs, shouting over the din. You're starting to see the market's rhythm: push, pull, bluff, and bargain. It's not just about goods. It's about status trust, and not looking like an easy mark. You're not there yet, but you're learning. One last quirky note: some markets had a pie powder court, a quick and dirty tribunal for settling trader disputes, named for the dusty feet of travelers. You glance at the Reeve, wondering if he's the judge here. You hope you don't find out. Your bartering's done for the day, and you trudge back to your hut basket heavier, but spirits slightly lifted. Joke 3. You're no medieval Bezos, but you didn't get totally fleeced, so call it a win. The lane's quieter now, the market stalls folding up, and you're already dreading tomorrow's chores. For now, you stash your goods, wipe the sweat from your brow, and brace for whatever this village demands next. You're a peasant, not a prince, and the market just reminded you of that. The market's chaos is behind you, your basket now holding a sad cabbage, a brick-like loaf, and 2 wormy apples. Your tunic's still a scratchy nightmare, and the village lane's mud clings to your shoes like it's got abandonment issues. It's midday, the sun barely warming the damp air, and your stomach's rumbling despite the apple you scarfed. You're about to face the grim reality of eating like a medieval peasant. And let's just say, it's not a Michelin star experience. You head back to your hut hoping to cobble together something edible, but the thought of more pottage makes you want to cry. Time to navigate the medieval menu, and you're already bracing for disappointment. You duck into your hut, the smoky air hitting you like a damp blanket. The dirt floors littered with straw, and a small fire smolders in the center, barely keeping the chill at bay. Your kitchen is a clay pot, a wooden spoon, and that cloudy pitcher of water you're still side-eyeing. You set your basket down, inspecting your haul. The cabbage is heavy but speckled with questionable spots. The bread could double as a weapon, and the apples, well, you're pretending the worms add protein. You've got no spices, no oil, and definitely no takeout. This is peasant cuisine survival food, not a vibe. You start with the cabbage, hacking at it with a blunt knife you found in the corner. It's tough, like it's been lifting weights, and your cuts are uneven. You toss the chunks into the pot along with some water from the pitcher. Pottage is the goal, basically a vegetable slop that's the backbone of every peasant's diet. You add a handful of wilted herbs you scrounged from near the hut, hoping they're not poisonous. Cooking over an open fire is a new kind of hell. The smoke stings your eyes, and the pot keeps tipping. You're sweating, swearing under your breath, and wondering how anyone survives this. Joke 1. If this is farm to table, you're ready to burn the farm. Here's a hard fact. Medieval peasants relied heavily on grains and vegetables, with meat being a rare luxury. By the 14th century, most ate pottage. Daily think oats, barley, or beans, boiled with whatever was on hand. Protein came from eggs or cheese, but only if you were lucky. You're not feeling lucky as you stir your cabbage sludge, which looks like it's plotting revenge. You break off a chunk of bread to soak in it, hoping it'll mask the taste. Spoiler, it doesn't. The bread's so dense it could anchor a ship, and the pottage tastes like boiled socks with a side of regret. Then there's the quirky tidbit. Some peasants ate trenchers, stale bread slabs used as plates, which they'd soak in stew and eat afterward. You glance at your loaf, wondering if it's trencher material, but it's so hard you'd need a chisel to cut it. You try anyway, sawing off a piece with your knife. It crumbles, and you give up dunking the crumbs straight into the pot. Historians still argue whether trenchers were common, or mostly a manor house thing. Either way, you're not fancy enough to care. You're just trying not to starve, and this meal's testing your will to live. You sit cross-legged by the fire, scooping pottage with your spoon. It's bland, gritty, and slightly burnt, but you force it down. Your stomach's not thrilled, but it's quieter now. You chew the apple next, spitting out a worm you're pretending wasn't there. Eating alone in this dim hut feels lonely, the silence broken only by the fire's crackle and a distant dog barking. You're starting to miss pizza, or even a sad gas station burrito. Anything but this. You wonder what the Lord's eating, probably roasted venison while you're here with cabbage soup from hell. Outside the village hums. You hear kids laughing, a cart rattling, and someone shouting about a lost hen. You're tempted to stay in your hut, hiding from the Reeves' glare and the market's hustle, but you know you can't. Food's scarce, and you've got to stretch this haul. You wrap the remaining bread in a cloth, hoping it'll last a few days, and stash the second apple under your straw mattress. You're not sure if rats are a problem, but you're not taking chances. The cabbage pottage, what's left of it, stays in the pot. You'll reheat it tomorrow, assuming you can stomach round 2. Joke 2. If medieval cooking's an art, you're the kid with crayons drawing stick figures. You're learning, though. You figure out how to bank the fire-piling ashes to keep it smoldering without burning your hut down. It's a small win, but you'll take it. You step outside, needing air that doesn't smell like smoke and failure. The lane's quieter now, most folks eating or working. You spot the woman from the market, the one who fleeced you for that cabbage. She's stirring her own pot, her kids hovering like hungry vultures. You nod, and she nods back, a rare moment of camaraderie. Maybe you're not totally hopeless. You wander toward the communal well, hoping for cleaner water to wash down the pottage's aftertaste. The well's busy with women gossiping as they haul buckets. You wait your turn, listening. They're talking about the harvest, the Lord's taxes, and a rumor that the miller's cheating on his weights again. You keep quiet, still the outsider, but you're picking up the village's pulse. Food's not just sustenance here, it's currency status, survival. You're starting to get why that cabbage cost 3 eggs. It's not just a vegetable, it's a lifeline. You fill your pitcher the water clearer than your hut's, but still suspect. You drink wincing at the metallic tang and head back. The sun's dipping, painting the sky orange, and the air's turning sharp. You're dreading another night on that lumpy straw bed. But first you've got to eat again. You reheat the pottage, adding a few more herbs to trick yourself into thinking it's better. It's not. You choke it down, paired with another chunk of bread that fights back with every bite. Joke 3. If this is slow food, you're ready to fast forward to the Renaissance. As you eat, you think about the village's food chain. The Lord gets the best meat wine, maybe even sugar if he's fancy. The reeve and craftsmen get scraps of that, while you and the other serfs get this. You're not bitter, just tired. You clean your spoon, bank the fire again, and crawl onto your mattress. The straw pokes through your tunic, and something skitters in the corner. You ignore it, too exhausted to care. Tomorrow's another day of chores, bartering, and probably more pottage. You're surviving barely, but the medieval menu's teaching you one thing: you're tougher than you thought. Or at least too stubborn to give up. You're still tasting yesterday's grim pottage, a flavor combo of regret and burnt cabbage that lingers like a bad decision. The village is stirring the dawn air sharp with frost, and your hut's so drafty you can see your breath. Your tunic's not cutting it anymore. It's itchy, thin, and smells like you've been wrestling pigs. Today you're diving into the world of medieval fashion, which is less runway chic and more survive the elements, or freeze. You need to figure out what passes for clothing here, how to wear it, and why it feels like wearing a potato sack designed by someone who hates you. Time to dress for dreary days, and you're already missing your cozy sweatpants. You start by inspecting what you've got: a rough wool tunic, knee-length with sleeves that keep slipping down. It's brown, or maybe just dirt-stained, and the weave's so coarse it's practically exfoliating your skin. Underneath, you've got a linen shift, slightly softer, but yellowed and smelling of stale sweat. No socks, no jacket, just a pair of leather shoes that are more holes than hide. You're freezing, and the straw mattress you slept on didn't help every poke, left you dreaming of memory foam. You rummage through your hut, hoping for something warmer, but all you find is a moth-eaten wool cloak, heavy as a rug, and twice as smelly. Beggars can't be choosers, so you drape it over your shoulders, wincing at the damp weight. Stepping outside, you see the village in full swing, men hauling wood, women carrying baskets, all dressed in variations of your getup. The wealthier types, like the miller sport, brighter dyes, russet or green, and cloaks with actual clasps. You're stuck with earth tones, the peasant default, and your cloaks tied with a bit of twine you found in the mud. A woman passes her dress layered with an apron, her hair tucked under a linen coif. She gives your sloppy outfit a once-over, and you swear she smirks. Joke 1, if this is medieval street style, you're the before in a makeover montage. You need to up your game, or at least not look like you dressed in the dark. Here's a solid fact. Medieval clothing was all about function with wool and linen dominating, because they were cheap and durable. By the 14th century, peasants wore simple tunics and shifts, often hand-sewn and patched until they fell apart. Dye was expensive, so bright colors were for the elite. Your brown rag is standard serf chic. You're learning this as you trudge to the village weaver, a wiry man working a loom outside his hut. His hands move fast, turning raw wool into cloth, and you're hoping he can help. You've got no eggs to barter, but you offer to haul his wool bales for a scrap of fabric. He squints, sizing you up, then nods. You're now officially in debt again. Carrying the bales is brutal. Your arms scream, and the wool's greasy, sticking to your hands. The weaver shows you a piece of undyed wool, rough but thicker than your tunic. It's not a parka, but it'll help. He says it'll cost a week's labor or something tradable like grain. You've got nothing, so you promise to help him tomorrow. He grumbles, but hands you a strip to patch your tunic, a small mercy. You thank him, clutching the fabric like it's gold, and head back to your hut to figure out how to use it. Sewing's not your thing. Your last stitch was a middle school home ec disaster, but you've got no choice. Back inside, you find a bone needle and some coarse thread in a corner, probably left by the hut's last occupant. You try patching the tunic's biggest hole, stabbing your finger twice and cursing under your breath. The result's lumpy like a kindergartner's art project, but it holds. You pull the tunic back on the patch, scratching your side, and wrap the cloak tighter. It's not warm exactly, but it's better than shivering. You're starting to get why peasants look so miserable. Every layer's a battle, and you're still cold. Joke 2, if Project Runway existed here, you'd be sent home for crimes against wool. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some peasants believed wearing a wolf's tooth amulet under their clothes warded off evil spirits. You spot a kid with a grimy string around his neck and wonder if it's worth a try. Your luck's been garbage since you got here, so maybe a tooth would help. Historians still argue whether these amulets were common or just a fad among the superstitious. Either way, you're not hunting wolves to find out. You've got enough problems like the fact that your shoes are disintegrating. You try stuffing them with straw for insulation, a trick you saw a woman do, but it just makes them crunch with every step. You venture out again, testing your upgraded outfit. The lane's muddy, and your cloak drags, soaking up grime like a sponge. You pass the reeve, who's yelling at a man for sloppy fence work. He glances at your patchy tunic and snorts like you're a walking fashion crime. You keep moving, head down, and notice how clothing signals status. The priest's robe, though plain, is clean and well-stitched. A tenant farmer's wife wears a dyed apron, a flex of her slightly better life. You, with your twine-tied cloak and crunchy shoes, scream bottom rung. It's humbling, but you're too cold to care about pride. You stop by the well, hoping to rinse the wool grease off your hands. The water's icy, numbing your fingers, but it helps. A girl's there, hauling a bucket, her dress patched, but neat. She chats, saying her mother spins wool at night to trade for dye. You nod, pretending you know what she's talking about, and ask how she keeps her clothes from falling apart. She laughs, saying more patches than prayers, and shows you a trick: double-stitch the seams. You file it away, grateful for the tip, and trudge back to your hut. You're learning slowly, but every step feels like a lesson in humility. Joke 3. If you keep patching this tunic, it'll be more thread than cloth by spring. You spend the afternoon reinforcing your tunic seams, pricking your fingers, but getting better. The cloak's a lost cause. It's too heavy to fix, but you tie it tighter, hoping it'll block the wind. The sun's fading, and the village settles into evening. You're still cold. Your outfit a far cry from cozy, but you're surviving. Clothing here isn't fashion. It's armor against a world that wants you frozen, filthy, or both. You crawl onto your straw bed, the cloak doubling as a blanket, and pray for a warmer tomorrow. For now, you're dressed like a peasant, and it's as dreary as it sounds. You're still shivering under your patched tunic, and that damp, heavy cloak, the village's chill seeping into your bones like an unwanted guest. The morning's gray with mist curling off the muddy lane, and your straw bed left you stiff and cranky. You're done with the market's hustle and the weaver's greasy wool bales. Today you're facing your so-called home. Your hut's a far cry from a cozy apartment. It's a drafty, smoky box that makes you miss central heating and a proper roof. Time to explore your shoddy shelter, figure out how to make it livable, and maybe not freeze to death tonight. Spoiler, it's going to be a rough ride. You step inside, the air thick with the smell of burnt wood and damp earth. The hut's small, maybe 10 feet square, with walls of wattle and daub sticks, woven like a basket and slathered with mud. It's holding together barely, but there's a fist-sized hole near the door where the wind sneaks in like a thief. The floor's packed dirt, uneven and cold, with bits of straw scattered like a half-hearted attempt at decor. In the center, a fire pit smolders the smoke, curling up to a hole in the thatched roof that's supposed to be a chimney. It's not doing its job. Your eyes are watering, and the hut's still chilly. Your straw mattress, lumpy and prickly, sits in one corner next to a rickety stool and that cloudy water pitcher. This is it, your medieval penthouse. You start by checking the walls, running your hands over the rough surface. The daub's cracked in places, and you can feel the breeze through the gaps. You've got no clue how to fix it, but you remember that quirky tidbit about cow dung sealant from your first day. You're not that desperate yet, but you're tempted to try mud. You grab a handful from outside, mix it with water, and smear it into the biggest crack. It's messy, and you're pretty sure you're doing it wrong, but it patches the hole. Sort of. Joke 1, if this hut's a fixer-upper, you're the world's worst handyman. You wipe your hands on your tunic, adding another layer of grime, and move on. Here's a hard fact. Medieval peasant homes were basic, built for function over comfort. By the 14th century, most had 1 or 2 rooms with earthen floors and thatched roofs that leaked in heavy rain. Privacy was a myth. Whole families shared the space, often with their animals. You're lucky to be alone, though. Lucky feels generous when you're staring at a roof that looks like it's one storm from collapsing. You climb onto the stool, wobbling to inspect the thatch. It's a tangle of straw and reeds, with patches thinning enough to show the sky. You poke at it, and a shower of dust rains down, making you cough. Great. You're not a roofer, but you've gotta do something before the next rain turns your hut into a swamp. You head outside, hoping to find spare straw or reeds. The lane's busy, kids chasing a dog, a man hauling firewood, but nobody's offering a Home Depot run. You spot a pile of cut reeds near the weaver's hut and ask if you can take some. He grunts, still sore about your wool-hauling debt, but waves you off. You grab an armful, their sharp edges nicking your hands, and drag them back. Fixing the roof means climbing onto it, which sounds like a recipe for disaster. You stack the stool on a crate, pray it holds, and scramble up. The thatch creaks under your weight, and you freeze, half expecting to crash through. You don't, but it's a close call. Patching the roof is slow work. You weave the reeds into the thinning spots, copying what you've seen on other huts. It's not pretty. Your patch looks like a bad haircut, but it might keep the rain out. You're sweating despite the cold, and your hands are scratched raw. A quirky note some peasants stuffed their roofs with moss to plug leaks, believing it brought good luck. You're fresh out of moss and luck, so reeds will have to do. Historians still argue whether moss was a practical fix or just superstition. Either way, you're not climbing up here again to find out. You slide down, nearly toppling the stool, and land in the mud. Classic. Back inside, you tackle the fire pit. The smoke's a problem, choking the hut and making your throat raw. You've seen others bank their fires with stones to control the burn, so you hunt for some in the lane. You find a few smooth and heavy and lug them back. Arranging them around the pit is trial and error. One rolls into the fire, sending sparks flying, and you yelp, stamping out a stray ember. Joke 2, if you burn this hut down, at least you'll be warm for a night. You get the stones in place, and the fire's a bit less wild, though the smoke's still a menace. You turn to the mattress next. It's a straw-stuffed sack, lumpy and crawling with who knows what. You shake it out, sneezing as dust flies, and find a few suspicious stains. You're not sleeping on that without a barrier. You grab the weaver's wool scrap from yesterday and lay it over the straw, tucking it tight. It's not a Tempur-Pedic, but it's better than nothing. You test it lying down and wince as a straw pokes your back. This is your life now. DIY home repairs and a bed that fights back. The hut's still a mess, but it's yours, and you're starting to feel a grudging attachment. You sweep the floor with a bundle of twigs, kicking up more dust than you clear, and rearrange the stool and pitcher to make the space feel less like a cave. Outside the village hums bells tolling a cart, rattling someone shouting about a loose cow. You're tempted to hide in here all day, but you know the Reeve's watching, and slacking's not an option. You step out the cold, hitting like a slap, and notice your cloak still damp from yesterday. You hang it by the fire, hoping it dries before nightfall. Joke 3. If this hut's cozy, then a dungeon's a spa retreat. You're learning to make do, but every fix feels like a band-aid on a sinking ship. The walls are patched, the roof's less leaky, and the fire's under control barely. You're surviving, but comfort's a distant dream. You glance at the manor house on the hill, its stone walls mocking your flimsy hut. The Lord's got glass windows, probably while you're here, with a shutter that rattles in the wind. You shake it off, focusing on the now. This shoddy shelter's home for better or worse, and you're making it work one muddy patch at a time. You're still settling into your barely patched hut, the smoky air and creaky thatch, a constant reminder of your new reality. The morning's raw, with a damp chill that makes your patched tunic feel like a wet dish rag. Your cloak's slightly drier, but still smells like a sheep's bad day. Yesterday's home repairs left you sore, and the straw mattress didn't do you any favors. Every joint's complaining. Today, you're back in the fields, not sowing seeds, but facing the back-breaking grind of medieval farm work. The Lord's men are watching, and slacking's not an option. You grab your crusty bread chunk, choke it down with a swig of cloudy water, and trudge out ready to toil under the manor's gaze. The lane's muddy, as ever, sucking at your holy shoes as you head to the fields. The village is awake, smoke curling from huts, kids herding geese, and the reeve's sharp voice cutting through the fog. You join a group of peasants trudging to a barley field, their faces set in grim determination. The field's a sea of green shoots, but it's not harvest time. It's weeding, plowing, or whatever soul-crushing task the reeves cooked up. A man hands you a hoe, its wooden handle splintered and heavy. You grip it already dreading the blisters and follow the others. The reeve's on horseback, his eyes like a hawk's, and you feel the weight of his stare. No pressure, right? You start hoeing, breaking up clods of earth between the barley rows. The soil stubborn, packed hard from last week's rain, and every swing jars your arms. Your back's screaming within minutes, and sweat stings your eyes despite the cold. The others move with a rhythm you can't match. Decades of practice make their motions look easy, while you're flailing like a city kid at a farm camp. A woman nearby, her hands calloused, as leather corrects your grip without a word, her expression saying, "Get it together." Joke one, if this is a workout, you're canceling your medieval gym membership. You adjust mimicking her, but your row's still a mess. Here's a hard fact. Medieval farming was the engine of feudal life, with peasants working communal fields to feed the village and fill the lord's granary. By the 14th century, the open field system divided land into strips, each family tending their own, under the lord's rules. You're on one of those strips, now your labor owed to the manor as part of your serfdom. The reeve's job is to squeeze every drop of work out of you, and he's good at it. You glance at him perched on his horse, and wonder if he ever smiles. Probably not. His face looks like it's carved from the same wood as your hoe. There's a quirky tidbit to this. Grind, some peasants sang work songs to keep rhythm, believing they pleased harvest spirits. You hear it now, a low droning chant from the group. Words you can't catch, but a melody that's oddly soothing. You try humming along, but your voice cracks, and a kid snickers. You shoot him a look, then focus on your hoe. Historians still argue whether these songs were spiritual, or just a way to survive the monotony. Either way, they're not helping your aching back. You're tempted to belt out a modern tune, but Sweet Caroline might get you labeled a witch, so you stick to humming. The work's relentless. You switch to pulling weeds, kneeling in the dirt, your knees soaked and your fingers numb. The weeds are tough rooted deep, and some have thorns that prick through your skin. You mutter a curse, then catch the reeve's eye and shut up fast. He's circling, shouting at a man who's paused to wipe his brow. You keep your head down, yanking weeds, like your life depends on it. It kinda does. Slacking could mean a fine, a whipping, or worse, the Lord's displeasure. You're starting to hate that manor house on the hill, its stone walls a constant reminder of who's really profiting from your sweat. By noon, your body's a knot of pain, and the field's only half done. The group breaks for a quick meal, bread and cheese passed around with water from a shared skin. You take your share, the cheese hard, but better than your hut's pottage. You sit on a stump, chewing slowly, and watch the others. They're tired, but steady, chatting about the weather or the Lord's latest tax. You're the odd one, out still clumsy with the hoe and too quiet to join in. A man offers you a sip of ale from his flask, a rare kindness. It's warm, bitter, and strong enough to make your eyes water, but you nod thanks. Small wins. Joke 2. If this is team building, you're ready to quit the village. You get back to work, now hauling manure to spread as fertilizer. The smell's a punch to the face, and the basket's heavy, sloshing with every step. You dump it, trying not to gag, and spread it with your hoe. The others don't flinch. They've done this their whole lives, but you're green, literally and figuratively. You remember that cow dung sealant story, and wonder if this is the same stuff. You hope not, but you're not asking. The reeve rides by, nodding slightly at your effort, and you feel a flicker of pride. Then he barks at you to move faster, and it's gone. The afternoon drags the sun hidden behind clouds, the air growing sharper. You're switching tasks again, repairing a ditch to keep the field drained. You shovel mud, your shoes sinking, and try to ignore the ache in your shoulders. The group's chant picks up, and you find yourself moving to its rhythm, your shovel syncing with the beat. It's not fun, but it's something proof you're not totally useless. You're learning slowly how to be part of this machine. The kid who snickered earlier is struggling with his shovel, and you help him clear a clod, earning a grudging nod. Progress, maybe. As the day ends, the reeve calls a halt, and the group disperses, limping back to the village. You're filthy exhausted, and pretty sure you smell worse than the manure. Your hands are blistered, your tunic soaked, and you're dreaming of a hot shower that doesn't exist. Joke 3. If this is living off the land, you're ready to move to a medieval condo. You trudge home, the manor house still looming a symbol of the Lord's grip on your life. You're just a cog, toiling to keep his world turning. But you made it through the day, hoe and all, and that's enough for now. You collapse in your hut, the fire's faint warmth a small comfort, and brace for tomorrow's grind. You're still aching from yesterday's fieldwork, your hands blistered, and your tunic stiff with dried mud. The village wakes under a heavy fog, muffling the usual clatter of carts and roosters. Your hut's smoky warmth is barely enough to keep the damp chill at bay, and your straw mattress left you with a crick in your neck. Today's not about plowing or bartering. You're dodging a new threat disease. The plague's shadow looms large, and the village's unsanitary streets are a breeding ground for trouble. You're about to navigate a world where a cough could mean curtains, and your modern germ knowledge is screaming to run. Grab your cloak, brace for the stench, and let's wade into the muck. You step outside the fog, wrapping the lane in a gray haze. The air's thick with the usual mixed manure smoke and rotting scraps piled near huts. Your shoes squelch in the mud, and you dodge a puddle that looks like it's hosting a science experiment. The village feels grimmer today. Folks are moving slower, their faces tight with worry. You overhear a woman muttering about a neighbor's fever, and your stomach twists. The Black Death, which killed millions in the 1340s, is fresh in everyone's memory, even if it's not peak pandemic now. You're no doctor, but you know enough to avoid anything that smells like trouble, literally. Your first stop is the communal well, hoping for clean water to wash the grime off your hands. The well's busy with women hauling buckets and swapping gossip. One mentions a man in the next village who died of a pestilence, and the group falls silent. You keep your distance, gripping your pitcher. Here's a hard fact. Sanitation in the 14th century was a nightmare. Most villages lacked sewers, and waste, human and animal, was dumped in streets or rivers. Dysentery, typhus, and other nasties were common, killing as many as 1 in 5 kids before age 5. You're starting to see why every surface feels like a petri dish, and you're itching to invent soap. You fill your pitcher, the water clearer than your hut's, but still murky. You rinse your hands, wincing at the cold, and notice a rash on your arm. It's probably just from the straw mattress, but your brain's screaming plague. You scrub harder, wishing for hand sanitizer. The women are still talking now about a charm to ward off disease, hanging garlic around your neck. You're skeptical, but you're not above trying it. A quirky tidbit, some believed wearing a dead spider in a nutshell protected against fever. You spot a kid with a string around his neck, maybe hiding a spider charm and shudder. Historians still argue whether these remedies were pure superstition or rooted in herbal traditions. Either way, you're sticking to water for now. You head back to the lane, clutching your pitcher and dodging a cart piled with manure. The fog's lifting, but the stench isn't, and you're hyper-aware of every cough or sneeze. A man hacks nearby, spitting into the mud, and you veer wide, your heart racing. You're not paranoid. You're just not built for a world without vaccines. You decide to check your hut for anything that could make you sick. Inside, the fire's smoldering, and the air's thick with smoke. You bank it carefully, remembering smoke can mask bad smells, but doesn't kill germs. The floor's a mess, straw, dirt, and crumbs from your brick-like bread. You sweep it with a twig bundle, kicking up dust that makes you sneeze. Great, now you're the one coughing. You inspect your food stash, half a cabbage, a shrinking loaf, and that wormy apple. Mold's a risk, and you're not eating anything fuzzy. You wrap the bread tighter in its cloth, hoping it holds, and move the apple to a dry corner. The cabbage is still edible, but you're not risking pottage. Today cooking means smoke, and you're already choking. You nibble the bread instead. It's grit crunching between your teeth. Joke 1, if this is clean eating, you're ready for a medieval drive-thru. You're trying to stay healthy, but every bite feels like a gamble. You venture out again, needing air and answers. The lane's busier now, with folks hauling wood or herding pigs. You notice how close everyone lives, huts crammed together, animals wandering free. It's a disease's dream, and you're stuck in the middle. You spot the Reeve still barking orders, and wonder if he ever worries about getting sick. Probably not. He's got a better hut and probably better food. You're starting to resent the manor house, its stone walls a world away from your leaky roof. If the plague hits, you're the one in the mud, not the Lord. You decide to seek out the village healer, hoping for tips to stay safe. You've heard she's near the church, so you head that way, dodging a kid tossing slop into the street. The church looms, its stone walls solid against the fog. Next to it, a small hut, with herbs hanging from the eaves, marks the healer's place. You knock, and a woman answers, her face lined but sharp. She's got a mortar and pestle, grinding something that smells like mint and despair. You explain you're worried about disease, pointing to your rash. She squints, then laughs a dry, knowing sound. Straw itch, she says, not plague, and hands you a salve that smells like old socks. You're relieved, but not thrilled about smearing it on. The healer's hut is a mix of practical and weird. She's got dried herbs, a few bones, and a charm that looks suspiciously like that spider in a nutshell deal. She tells you to drink boiled water and avoid foul airs, which is easier said than done in this village. You thank her, promising to bring eggs, if you get any, and leave with the salve and a sliver of hope. Joke 2, if this salve works, you're nominating her for medieval WebMD. You're learning to navigate this germy world, but it's a minefield, and you're no expert. Back in the lane, you apply the salve, wincing at the smell. The rash stings, but feels better, and you're grateful for small mercies. You keep moving, avoiding a pile of rotting cabbage someone dumped. The village's sanitation, or lack of it, is your biggest enemy. You're tempted to start a cleanliness crusade, but you'd be laughed out of town. Instead, you focus on survival, clean water, safe food, and staying clear of anyone who looks sick. You pass the well again, refilling your pitcher, and notice the women are quieter now, their gossip replaced by weary glances. The plague's shadow is real, and everyone feels it. Joke 3. If you survive this, you're pitching medieval hygiene for dummies to the Lord. You head back to your hut, the fog settling in again, the air heavy with damp and worry. You bank the fire, sweep the floor one more time, and check your food stash. The bread's still good, the cabbage is holding, and the apple's a last resort. You're doing what you can, patching your hut, bartering for goods, and now dodging disease. The village keeps turning, but you're hyper-aware of its dangers. You crawl onto your straw bed, the salve stink clinging to your skin, and pray you wake up healthy. For now, you're a live rash, and all in a world that's trying its best to take you down. You're still rattled from the village's germy streets, your arm slathered in that pungent salve that's hopefully taming your rash. The fog's cleared, leaving a crisp morning with a sky like faded parchment. Your hut's smoky air clings to your patched tunic, and the straw mattress left you stiff again. That healer's advice, boil water, avoid foul airs, is echoing in your head. But today's not about dodging disease. You've got a nagging cough, probably from all the smoke, and it's time to visit that healer again. You're diving into the world of medieval medicine, where cures are as likely to kill you as help you. Grab your cloak brace for weird remedies, and let's hope you don't end up with a spider charm. You trudge down the muddy lane, the village humming with its usual chaos. Pigs snorting a cart, creaking, and kids shouting over a runaway goose. Your cough's dry but persistent, and every hack draws glances from passers-by. They're not worried for you. They're worried about plague. You keep your distance, heading for the healer's hut by the church. The stone tower looms a reminder of the village's unyielding rhythm, but you're focused on not coughing up a lung. The healer's hut is unmistakable. Herbs dangle from the eaves, and the air smells like mint and something faintly sour. You knock, clutching your cloak to hide your nerves. The healer opens the door, her sharp eyes scanning you like you're a puzzle. She's older than you thought, her hands stained from years of grinding herbs. You explain your cough, keeping it vague to avoid a plague panic. She nods, motioning you inside. The hut's dim, lit by a single rushlight, with shelves of jars and bundles of dried plants. A pot simmers on a small fire, filling the air with a bitter tang. She sits you on a stool, peering at your throat and pressing your chest. "Smoke's in your lungs," she says. Her Middle English clipped, but clear. You nod, relieved it's not worse, but brace for whatever cure she's got in mind. Here's a hard fact. Medieval medicine was a mix of herbal knowledge and guesswork, with most healers relying on plants, prayers, and tradition. By the 14th century, humoral theory, balancing the body's humors like blood and phlegm, dominated, often leading to bizarre treatments like bleeding or purging. You're hoping for something simpler like tea, but the healer's already grinding a mix of horehound and fennel in her mortar. She mutters about clearing your chest, and you're just glad it's not leeches. She hands you a clay cup of steaming liquid, warning you to sip slowly. It tastes like licorice and dirt, but you choke it down, wincing as it burns your throat. Then comes the quirky tidbit some healers used sympathetic magic, like tying a red string around a wound to bind the pain. You notice a red thread on the healer's wrist and wonder if she's hedging her bets. She catches you staring and smirks, saying it's for luck, not medicine. Historians still argue whether these rituals were placebo or deeply held beliefs. Either way, you're not asking for a string. You're already rubbing that salve, drinking her tea, and praying this cough doesn't get worse. The healer adds a poultice to your chest, a warm, sticky mess of herbs wrapped in linen. It smells like a forest had a bad day, but you thank her, promising eggs or labor when you can. You leave the hut, the poultice warm under your tunic, and head back to the lane. The tea's settling your cough, but you're lightheaded, maybe from the fumes or just hunger. You nibble your dwindling bread, stash its grit familiar now, and sip water from your pitcher. The village feels less hostile today, or maybe you're just too tired to care. You pass the reeve, shouting at a man for shoddy fence work, and keep your head down. You're not here to make waves, just to breathe without hacking. Joke 1, if this poultice works, you're starting a medieval Yelp for healers. 5 stars, no spiders. You decide to rest near the well where the air's fresher. A group of women are gossiping, their buckets clanking as they haul water. They're talking about the healer, half in awe, half suspicious. One says she cured a fever with willow bark. Another whispers she's too close to the old ways, like chanting over bones. You stay quiet, sipping your water, but you're starting to see the healer's tightrope help too much, and she's a witch. Fail, and she's useless. You're grateful for her tea, though, and the poultice is easing your chest, even if it smells like a compost heap. The village's health is a fragile thing. You notice how many folks look worn, sunken eyes, limps, or coughs like yours. The healer's busy, but she can't fix everything. You remember the market's toad on a string guy and wonder if desperation drives people to him. Your modern brain's screaming for antibiotics, but you're stuck with herbs and hope. You adjust the poultice, its warmth fading, and decide to keep your hut's fire low today. Less smoke might help, even if it means freezing. You're learning to balance risks, cold versus cough hunger versus moldy bread. Joke 2. If medieval healthcare's free, you're still overpaying with this smell. You head back to your hut, the lane quieter as noon approaches. The church bell tolls, signaling prayers or lunch, and you're hoping for the latter. You've got half a cabbage left, but pottage feels risky with your cough. You stick to bread and water sitting by your smoldering fire. The poultice is drying, flaking off, but your cough's quieter, a small victory. You sweep the floor, keeping the dust down, and check your mattress for more rash-causing straw. It's clean enough, but you're still dreaming of a real bed. You step outside again, needing to move. The village is settling into midday folks, eating, working, or hiding from the reeve. You spot the healer in the distance, delivering a bundle to a hut. She's vital but vulnerable, and you're starting to respect her hustle. You're also starting to feel human again, the tea and poultice doing their job. You pass the manor house's shadow, its walls mocking your fragile health. The Lord's probably got a private healer, maybe even a doctor, with actual training. You meanwhile are one bad cough from a dirt nap. Joke 3. If you survive this, you're writing herbs for dummies for the next surf. You loop back to the well, refilling your pitcher and rinsing your face. The water's cold, shocking you awake, and you notice the women are gone, replaced by a kid scrubbing a bucket. He's got a cough too worse than yours, and you step back, instincts kicking in. The healer's words, avoid foul airs, ring loud, and you're not taking chances. You head home the lane, now dappled with weak sunlight. Your hut's still a shoddy mess, but it's yours, and you're keeping it as clean as you can. You bank the fire, sip more water, and rest the poultice's faint warmth, a reminder you're not dead yet. The village keeps turning, but you're carving out a sliver of control, one herb at a time. You're feeling a bit better, your cough quieter thanks to the healer's tea and that smelly poultice, though its herbal stink still clings to your tunic. The morning's bright, the village lane gleaming with fresh mud after a night's drizzle. Your hut's smoky air and lumpy mattress are starting to feel like old enemies, but you're pushing through. Today's not about fields or germs, it's about faith. You're headed to the stone church for a sermon, a chilly, solemn affair that's as much about survival as salvation. You pull on your cloak, still damp and heavy, grab a crust of bread for breakfast, and step out, ready to blend into the village's spiritual pulse. The lane's busy with folk streaming toward the church, their faces a mix of duty and dread. The church's square tower looms over the huts, its gray stone, the sturdiest thing in this muddy world. Bells toll deep and insistent, pulling everyone like a leash. You join the crowd, your shoes squelching, and notice how nobody's skipping this. Missing church isn't just a sin, it's a social death sentence. Gossip spreads faster than plague here. Your cough's under control, but you keep a hand over your mouth, avoiding the wary glances of a woman clutching a rosary. You're an outsider, and every stare reminds you to play along. You reach the church, its heavy oak door creaking open. Inside, it's colder than outside the stone walls, sucking up any warmth. The air smells of damp stone wax and old incense with a faint whiff of unwashed bodies. The nave's packed peasants in patched tunics, kids fidgeting, and the reeve standing stiffly near the front. You squeeze into a back corner, your cloak brushing the rough wall. The altar's simple, a wooden cross, draped with a faded cloth, flanked by flickering candles. The priest, gaunt and robed in black, stands ready, his eyes scanning the crowd like he's counting souls. You're not religious, but you're not dumb. You mimic the others, bowing your head when they do. The sermon starts, the priest's voice booming in Latin. You catch maybe one word in 10, but the tone's clear. Obey God, fear hell, and don't cross the Lord. It's less a pep talk, more a cosmic threat. Here's a hard fact. The medieval church was a powerhouse controlling everything from baptisms to burials. By the 14th century, it owned vast lands and shaped daily life, with priests acting as gatekeepers to salvation and the Lord's favor. You're feeling that now, the weight of eyes on you, the unspoken rule to conform. You shift on your feet, the stone floor numbing your toes, and try to look pious, whatever that means. The priest switches to Middle English, preaching about humility and hard work. You catch a jab about idle hands and glance at the reeve who's nodding like it's aimed at you. Great. The sermon drags, and your mind wanders to the healer's hut. Her herbs felt more practical than this. A quirky tidbit pops up. Some churches had squints, small holes in walls for lepers to watch services without mingling. You scan the walls, spotting a narrow slit near the chancel. Is it a squint You're not asking, but it's a reminder of how disease and faith collide here. Historians still argue whether squints were common or just a quirk of certain parishes either way. You're glad you're not on the outside looking in. The crowd kneels for prayers, and you follow the floor, biting your knees. The Latin chants are hypnotic, even if you don't understand them, and you find yourself swaying to the rhythm. A kid nearby sneezes, and you flinch, your plague paranoia kicking in. You inch away, earning a glare from a woman who thinks you're shirking devotion. Joke 1. If this is spiritual cleansing, you'd rather take a bath, assuming baths exist here. You refocus, muttering a fake prayer to blend in. The priest's talking about the harvest, now blessing the fields, and you realize faith isn't just about heaven, it's about survival, tying the village to the land and the Lord. The service ends, but not before a collection. A wooden box passes, and folks drop in coins, eggs, or even a turnip. You've got nothing but your bread crust, and you're not donating that. You pass the box, avoiding the priest's stare. Outside, the crowd spills into the churchyard, some lingering to gossip, others hurrying to chores. You linger too, catching snippets about the sermon. Some think the priest's too harsh. Others fear his warnings about sin. You're starting to see the church's grip. It's not just a building, it's the village's heartbeat, tying everyone to God, the Lord, and each other. You wander to the churchyard's edge, where graves, simple stones, or wooden crosses dot the grass. Some are fresh, a reminder of the plague's shadow. You think of the healer's tea, the market's toad charms, and now this sermon, all grasping for control in a world that feels like it's one bad harvest from collapse. You're not here to judge. You're just trying to survive the cold, the stares, and your own doubts. Joke 2. If heaven's got central heating, you're ready to sign up. Just don't tell the priest. You adjust your cloak, still damp, and head back to the lane, the bells echo fading behind you. The village is waking fully. Now smoke curls from huts, and the reeves shouting at someone about a broken plow. You're not ready to face him, so you detour past the well, where women are already hauling water. They're talking about the sermon, one joking that the priest's voice could scare crows. You smile, and she nods, a rare moment of warmth. You're still the outsider, but you're learning the village's rhythm, church work, survival repeat. You fill your pitcher, the water icy, and sip slowly. Your cough still quiet, but lurking. The healer's poultice is gone, but her tea's lingering effects keep you going. Back at your hut, you bank the fire, trying to keep the smoke low. The sermon's left, you uneasy not about God, but about fitting in. You're playing a role peasant serf believer, but one slip could mark you as trouble. You nibble your bread, its grit, familiar now, and check your food stash, half a cabbage, a shrinking loaf. No apple. You're hungry, but you're saving the cabbage for pottage tomorrow. The church's rules, the Lord's taxes, the reeves' glare, they're all chains, and you're feeling them tighten. You're surviving, but it's a grind, and faith feels like another chore. Joke 3. If this is finding peace, you'd settle for a nap without straw pokes. You step outside the lane, now bustling. The manor house looms on the hill, its walls a reminder of who really calls the shots. The priest's got God, the Lord's got power, and you've got a leaky hut and a cough that's hopefully gone. You're weaving through this world, market fields, church, picking up its rules, its fears, its small kindnesses. The churchyard's graves stay with you, a quiet warning to keep moving. You adjust your cloak brace for the day's next task, and trudge on one muddy step at a time under the village's watchful eyes. You're still buzzing from the church's chilly sermon, the priest's warnings about idle hands ringing in your ears as you trudge back to the muddy lane. The village is alive, the midday sun cutting through the morning's damp. Though your cloak's still heavy with last night's drizzle, your cough's quieter thanks to the healer's tea, but your tunic's itch and your hut's smoky air are wearing you thin. Today's not about faith or fields. You're diving into the village's social pulse, overhearing rumors and tales at the tavern. It's your chance to catch the gossip, maybe learn something useful, and avoid sticking out like a 21st century sore thumb. Grab your bread crust brace for some rowdy chatter, and let's slip into the tavern's smoky haze. The tavern's not hard to find, a squat thatched building near the market square, its door propped open with a barrel. The smell hits you first, stale ale sweat, and something like burnt onions. You step inside, blinking in the dim light. The room's packed wooden benches crammed with men and a few women, their voices a loud jumble over the clink of clay mugs. A fire crackles in one corner, spitting smoke, and a barmaid weaves through balancing a tray of foaming ale. You've got no coins, but you're hoping your presence doesn't scream outsider. You slide onto a bench near the back, clutching your bread like it's a ticket to belong. The chatter's a mix of complaints and boasts. A man with a beard like a bird's nest is grumbling about the Lord's latest tax, a whole pig for the manor's feast. A woman counters with a story about her cousin dodging taxes by hiding his best cow in the woods. Laughter erupts, and you force a smile, trying to blend in. Your Middle English is shaky, but you're picking up the vibe. This is where the village vents, schemes, and spins tales. You nibble your bread, its grit familiar now, and listen hard, hoping to catch something that'll help you navigate this world, or at least keep you out of the Reeves' crosshairs. Here's a hard fact. Taverns were social hubs in medieval villages, serving as gathering spots for news deals and disputes. By the 14th century, they were regulated with laws capping ale prices and punishing watered-down brews. You're feeling that regulation now. A sign above the bar lists fines for false ale, though the stuff in these mugs looks murky enough to hide a fish. You're not drinking. Your empty pockets and plague paranoia keep you sober. Instead, you focus on the gossip, which flows faster than the ale. A man mentions bandits on the forest road, and your ears perk up troubles closer than you thought. Then comes the quirky tidbit. Some taverns hosted ale tastings, where locals judged new brews often with more enthusiasm than skill. You overhear two men arguing about last week's batch. One swears it was divine. The other says it tasted like piss and piety. They're half drunk, laughing, and you can't help but grin. Historians still argue whether these tastings were serious quality control or just excuses to get sloshed. Either way, you're glad to be on the sidelines. The barmaid catches your eye frowning at your empty hands, and you flash an awkward smile, hoping she doesn't kick you out. Joke 1, if this is medieval happy hour, you're the designated driver. The talk shifts to the Lord's manor. A woman with a scar on her cheek whispers about a knight who visited last month, supposedly spying for a rival lord. The table leans in, voices low. You're intrigued but nervous. Spying sounds like a fast track to the gallows, and you're already on thin ice with the reeve. You adjust your cloak, trying to look casual, and catch another tale. The miller's wife allegedly cursed a neighbor's cow for eating her herbs. The crowd splits some laugh, others cross themselves, fearing witchcraft. You're skeptical, but keep quiet. Standing out here could mark you as trouble, and you're not ready for that kind of attention. You shift on the bench, your back aching from yesterday's field work. The tavern's warm but smoky, and your cough twitches, though you stifle it. A man nearby tells a wild story about a ghost in the forest, a knight who died in a duel and now haunts the road. The crowd's hooked kids wide-eyed, and you're half convinced it's just bandit rumors dressed up for drama. Still, it's a reminder this village thrives on stories, true or not. You're starting to see how gossip shapes the pecking order, say the wrong thing, and you're the next tale. You keep your mouth shut, nodding like you've heard it all before. Joke 2. If this tavern's a newsroom, it's all fake news, and no fact-checkers. The barmaid passes again, and you offer to help clear mugs for a sip of ale. She snorts, but agrees, tossing you a rag. You wipe tables dodging spills and drunk elbows, and earn a small mug. The ale's bitter, warm, and strong enough to make your head spin, but it's a win. You sip slowly back at your bench and tune into a new rumor. The priest's been hoarding wax from church candles. It's scandalous petty, and exactly the kind of dirt that fuels this place. You file it away, wondering if it's true, or just someone settling a grudge. The tavern's getting rowdier, with a dice game breaking out in one corner. You steer clear gambling's a quick way to lose what little you've got. Instead, you listen to a woman spinning a tale about a local hero, a peasant, who outsmarted a bandit by hiding in a barrel. The crowd cheers, and you're starting to like this place, smoke and all. It's raw, real, and a window into the village's soul, fears, grudges, and dreams of something better. You're still an outsider, but you're learning the rhythm. Listen, nod, don't overshare. Your modern quips stay locked away. Spill the tea would get you weird looks at best. As the sun dips, the crowd thins, and you're running out of bread to justify your seat. You slip out the cool air, a relief after the tavern's haze. The lane's quieter, with folks heading home or to evening chores. You're buzzing with what you've heard. Bandits, curses, ghosts, and that shady priest. It's a lot, and you're not sure what's useful yet, but knowledge feels like power in a place where you've got none. Joke 3, if gossip's currency, you're still broke, but at least you're window shopping. You trudge back to your hut, the manor house's shadow, looming as always a reminder of the Lord's grip on this world. Inside, you bank the fire, the smoke stinging your eyes. Your food stash is grim, half a cabbage, a shrinking loaf, no ale to soften the blow. You nibble the bread, its grit, a familiar foe, and sip water from your pitcher. The tavern's tales swirl in your head, mixing with the church's warnings and the healer's herbs. You're weaving through this village, fields, market church, now tavern picking up its secrets, its edges. You're surviving barely, but every rumor's a clue to staying alive. You crawl onto your straw bed, the tavern's warmth fading, and brace for tomorrow's grind, hoping the gossip doesn't turn on you. You're still mulling over the tavern's wild tales, ghosts, cursed cows, and that sketchy priest to your head buzzing as you step into another damp morning. The village lane's a muddy mess, the air sharp with smoke and the faint tang of rotting scraps. Your tunic's a patchwork of stains, and your cloak's no match for the chill. The tavern gave you gossip, but today's about getting your hands dirty in a new way crafting. You're trying your luck with the blacksmith or weaver, hoping to make something useful with tools that belong in a museum. Your cough's nearly gone, but your back's still whining from the fields. Grab your bread crust brace for some clumsy work, and let's see if you can hammer or weave without losing a finger. You head toward the blacksmith's forge, its glow and clang drawing you like a beacon. The smith's a burly guy, his apron singed, and his hands scarred from years at the anvil. The forge is open to the lane, heat rolling off it in waves, and the air smells of charcoal and hot metal. You've got nothing to trade, no eggs, no coins, but you offer to haul coal for a chance to learn. He squints, sizing you up, then nods, pointing to a pile of black lumps. You grab a basket, its weight, pulling at your sore muscles and start carting. The coal's gritty coating your hands and tunic, and you're already regretting this. Joke 1, if this is maker culture, you're sticking to IKEA. You lug the coal sweat mixing with dust, while the smith hammers a horseshoe, sparks flying like tiny fireworks. He's focused every strike precise, and you're in awe despite the grunt work. Here's a hard fact. Blacksmiths were vital in medieval villages, crafting everything from nails to swords. By the 14th century, they used water-powered bellows in some regions, but this village's forge is old-school hand-pumped bellows and raw muscle. You're feeling that now, as you pump the bellows, your arms burning, while the smith shapes red-hot iron. He grunts approval, but barks when you slow down. You're not crafting yet, just surviving his pace. After an hour, he lets you try hammering a nail. The iron's hot, glowing orange, and you're nervous. Your only hammer experience was a crooked shelf in college. You swing missing the mark, and the smith snorts, showing you how to aim. Your next hit's better flattening the iron, but it's crooked. You keep at it, your hands trembling, and manage a lumpy nail. It's no masterpiece, but it's yours, and you tuck it into your belt, feeling a flicker of pride. The smith hands you a scrap of iron as payment, saying you're not hopeless. High praise, maybe. Then there's the quirky tidbit. Some blacksmiths mark their work with secret symbols, believing they gave tools extra strength. You spot a faint rune on the smith's anvil, half hidden by soot. Is it magic, or just his signature? Historians still argue whether these marks were superstition or early branding. Either way, you're not asking. You're too busy dodging sparks and trying not to burn your tunic. The smith's already back to his horseshoe, and you're dismissed your arms like jelly, and your face smudged with coal dust. You're not a blacksmith, but you've got a nail and a story, so call it a win. You decide to try the weaver next, hoping for something softer than iron. His hut's near the market, the looms clack, clack, audible from the lane. The weaver's still grumpy about your wool-hauling debt, but he lets you watch his fingers flying through warp and weft. You're mesmerized by the rhythm, the coarse wool turning into cloth under his hands. You ask to try offering to sweep his floor for a lesson. He sighs, but agrees, handing you a shuttle. Weaving's harder than it looks. The threads tangle, and your cloth looks like a drunk spider's web. The weaver corrects you, his patience thin, and you start to get the hang of it, though your strip's lumpy and uneven. Weaving's slow, and your back screaming from hunching over the loom. You're starting to respect the weaver's skill. Every tunic, every cloak starts here, and it's grueling. You're not making a masterpiece, just a scrap to patch your cloak, but it's something. The weaver inspects your work, muttering about better than nothing, and lets you keep the scrap. You're racking up debts, coal wool now this, but you're learning, and that's currency in its own way. Joke 2, if this is handmade, you're ready for a medieval Etsy ban. You thank the weaver, your hands cramped, and head back to the lane, the looms clack, fading behind you. The village is in full swing, Carts rattling, kids chasing a pig, the Reeves' voice barking somewhere. You're filthy, your tunic, a canvas of coal and wool fluff, but you've got a nail, an iron scrap, and a woven patch. You're not a craftsman, but you're not useless either. You stop by the well, rinsing your hands in icy water, the coal dust stubborn under your nails. A woman's there gossiping about the tavern's latest tale, a bandit scare that's got everyone jumpy. You listen, remembering the tavern's bandit rumors, and wonder if your nail could double as a weapon. Probably not, but it's a thought. Back at your hut, you stash your loot, the nail and iron under the mattress, the woven scrap with your cloak. You're starting to feel like a medieval magpie hoarding bits to survive. You nibble your dwindling bread, its grit a familiar foe, and sip water from your pitcher. The cabbage is still there, but pottage feels like too much work after today's grind. You're hungry, but too tired to care. The hut's smoky, the fire barely keeping the chill out, and you're dreaming of a world with power tools and sewing machines. Crafting here is raw, slow, and humbling, and you're barely scratching the surface. Joke 3. If you're a craftsman, the village is hiring for disaster apprentice. You step outside, needing air. The manor house looms its stone walls, mocking your clumsy efforts. The lord's got blacksmiths forging swords, weavers making tapestries, while you're here with a wonky nail and a lumpy patch. You're surviving, though, and that's enough. The lane's quieter now, the sun dipping, and you spot the blacksmith's glow in the distance, still hammering. You're starting to see the village's heartbeat. Every nail, every thread holds it together, and you're part of it, however small. You head back inside, bank the fire, and collapse on your straw bed. Your hands still tingling from the day's work, ready for whatever tomorrow throws at you. You're still buzzing from yesterday's crafting fiasco, your hands sore from hammering a lumpy nail and fumbling the weaver's loom. The village lane's a muddy slog, under a sky heavy with clouds, the air thick with the usual mix of smoke and damp wool. Your tunic's a mess, coal dust wool fluff, and a new tear from snagging it on a crate. Your hut's smoky warmth is barely holding off the chill, and that straw mattress is still your spine's worst enemy. Today's not about crafting or sermons. You're facing a new threat, bandits. Whispers from the tavern and market have you on edge, and you're tasked with preparing for outlaws lurking beyond the village. Grab your cloak, clutch that crooked nail like it's a lifeline, and let's venture into the shadows. You step out the lane quieter than usual, folks moving with a nervous edge. The Reeves shouting orders near the church, organizing a group to patrol the village's edges. You're roped in, probably because you were dumb enough to make eye contact. He hands you a stick, supposedly a weapon, but it's more kindling than club, and points you toward a group of men heading to the forest road. Your heart's pounding. The tavern's bandit tales are fresh, and you're no action hero. You tuck your nail into your belt, hoping it looks intimidating, and trudge along the mud, sucking at your holy shoes. The group's grim, a mix of farmers and craftsmen, their faces set like they've done this before. The forest looms ahead, a dark tangle of oaks and brambles that swallows the path. You've heard about bandits, outcasts, deserters, or just desperate men who rob travelers and raid villages. The Reeves warned that a merchant was hit last week. His cart looted a mile from here. You're not sure if you're more scared of bandits or the Reeves whip if you bail. Joke 1, if this is neighborhood watch, you're ready to move to a safer medieval zip code. You grip your stick, trying to look tough, but your hands are shaking. Here's a hard fact. Banditry was a real threat in the 14th century, especially in rural areas, with weak law enforcement. Forests and roads were prime hunting grounds, and villages like yours relied on communal patrols to deter attacks. You're part of that now, scanning the trees for movement, your breath catching at every rustle. The group's leader, a stocky farmer with a real axe, mutters about checking snares. Bandits sometimes trip hunting traps, giving away their position. You nod, pretending you know what he's talking about, and follow your stick, feeling flimsier by the second. The forest is eerie, the canopy blocking what little sun there is. Twigs snap underfoot, and a bird's caw makes you jump. The men spread out, checking paths and marking trees with notches to track their route. You're assigned to watch a narrow trail, your job to shout if you see anything. You crouch behind a bush, clutching your stick, and try not to imagine a bandit's blade. A quirky tidbit, some villages hung bells on forest paths, believing the noise scared off outlaws, or at least woke up sleepy patrols like you. You wish for a bell now, anything to break the silence. Historians still argue whether these bells were practical or just a desperate placebo. Either way, you're stuck with your stick and a prayer. You're scanning the trail when you hear a crack, a branch, not a twig. Your heart leaps, and you grip the nail, its blunt point a sad excuse for defense. You peer through the brambles, expecting a bandit, but it's just a deer, its eyes glinting before it bolts. You exhale, your knees wobbly, and realize you're not cut out for this. The farmer calls you back, satisfied the trail's clear, and you rejoin the group, trying to hide your relief. They're checking a snare now. It's rope, frayed, but empty. You're starting to see how the village survives patrols, traps, and a whole lot of grit keep the wolves at bay, human or otherwise. The patrol moves deeper, and you're tasked with carrying a bundle of stakes to reinforce a lookout post. The wood's heavy, digging into your shoulder, and you're sweating despite the cold. You're learning the forest's layout, paths, clearings, places bandits might hide. The men talk low, sharing stories of past raids, a peddler beaten, a barn burned. It's not tavern gossip anymore. It's real, and you're in it. You adjust your cloak, the damp wool chafing, and wonder how you ended up playing medieval cop. Joke too, if this is community service, you're ready to plead guilty to napping instead. Back at the post, a rickety platform in a tree, you help hammer stakes into the ground using a rock, since your nail's too precious to risk. Your swings are clumsy, and a stake splits, earning a grunt from the farmer. You try again, getting it right, and the post feels sturdier. It's not much, but it's something a tiny stand against the chaos out here. The group's leader nods, and you feel a flicker of belonging, even if you're still the weakest link. You're starting to get the village's rhythm. Every patrol, every stake is a fight to keep this fragile world intact. The patrol wraps up, the men satisfied the road's safe for now. You trudge back the forest, spitting you out into the village's muddy embrace. The Reeve's waiting his scowl softer, and he dismisses you with a grunt. You're exhausted, your arms throbbing, your stick still useless, but untested. You stop by the well, rinsing the forest's grime from your hands, the water like ice. A woman's there gossiping about the patrol, and you catch her eyeing your nail. You tuck it away, not ready to explain your sad weapon. The tavern's bandit tales feel heavier, now you've seen the forest's shadows. And they're not just stories. Back at your hut, you collapse by the fire, the smoke stinging your eyes. Your food stash is grim, half a cabbage, a shrinking loaf, no energy for pottage. You nibble the bread, its grit a familiar foe, and sip water. your hands still trembling from the patrol. The nails in your belt, the iron scrap and woven patch stashed under your mattress. You're collecting bits of this world, tools, skills, fears, and it's changing you. You're not a hero, but you're not running either. Joke 3. If bandits attack, you're throwing your stick and sprinting, call it medieval cardio. The village settles into evening, the lane. Quiet. The manor house's shadow. Long and cold. You're starting to feel the weight of this place. Fields, church, tavern, now forest. Every step's a lesson, every rumor a warning. You bank the fire, the warmth barely enough, and crawl onto your straw bed. The forest's silence haunts you, but so does the village's strength. Those men, those stakes, that fragile post. You're part of it, however small, and that's enough for now. You close your eyes, the nails weight against your hip, and brace for tomorrow's grind, hoping the bandits stay in the shadows. You're still shaky from yesterday's bandit patrol, the forest's eerie silence clinging to you like damp fog. The village lane's alive with a new energy today, laughter music, and the smell of roasting meat, cutting through the usual mud and manure stench. Your tunic's a wreck, patched and smudged with coal, and your cloak's barely holding off the morning chill. The straw mattress left you stiff, and your nail, your sad excuse for a weapon, is tucked in your belt. Today's no day for patrols or sermons. It's a festival, a rare break from the grind. You're joining the village's rowdy fair, complete with music, dancing, and probably some chaos. Grab your bread crust brace for a crowd, and let's dive into the medieval party scene. You follow the noise to the market square, transformed into a riot of color and sound. Banners faded, but bright, hang from poles, and tables grown with food loaves, cheeses, and a pig turning on a spit. Musicians play a tabor's thump, a fiddle's wail, and a bagpipe that sounds like a cat in a blender. Kids dart through the crowd chasing a leather ball, while adults shout, laugh, or argue over ale mugs. Your stomach growls at the sight of real food, but you've got no coins, just a half cabbage and a shrinking loaf back at your hut. You're here to blend in, maybe scrounge a bite, and soak up the village's rare joy. You weave through the throng, dodging a drunk farmer swaying to the music. A woman offers you a sip of ale from a shared jug, her smile wide and slightly sloshed. You take a swig, bitter, warm, and strong enough to curl your toes, and hand it back, grateful. The festival's a mix of chaos and order, with the reeve hovering at the edges, his scowl softer, but still sharp. You spot the priest blessing a table of bread, his black robe out of place amid the revelry. Even the Lord's men are here, lounging near a bonfire, their swords a quiet warning. You keep your distance, clutching your bread crust like a lifeline. Here's a hard fact. Medieval festivals were vital for morale, often tied to saints' days or harvests. By the 14th century, they mixed Christian rites with older pagan traditions, offering food, music, and a chance to forget the grind. This one's likely for St. John's Day, given the bonfire and midsummer vibe. You're feeling it. Now the crowd's energy is infectious, even if you're still the outsider. You try dancing, mimicking the others in a clumsy circle, your holy shoes slipping in the mud. A girl laughs, not unkindly, and pulls you in, showing you the steps. You're terrible, but it's fun. And for a moment, you forget the manor's shadow. Then comes the quirky tidbit. Some festivals included mummer plays, where locals dressed as saints or demons for crude skits. You spot one starting a man in a tattered cloak, playing the devil chased by kids with sticks. The crowd roars, and you join in cheering as the devil trips and begs for mercy. Historians still argue whether mummers were pure entertainment or carried deeper ritual meaning. Either way, it's the best show you've seen since landing here. You're tempted to join, but your dancing's bad enough, and you're not ready for a starring role as weird new serf. You move to a food table hoping to scrounge. A woman slicing bread, and you offer to carry her empty baskets for a piece. She agrees, tossing you a chunk with a wink. It's fresh, soft, and worlds better than your gritty loaf. You devour it, savoring the buttery crust, and feel almost human. Joke 1, if this is medieval catering, you're ready to crash every Saint's Day. You're learning the festival's unspoken rules. Share, barter, keep moving. You help a man stack firewood for the bonfire, earning a slice of cheese that's sharp but edible. Your stomach's singing, and you're starting to love this chaotic break. The music shifts faster now, and the dancing gets wilder. You're swept into another circle, your cloak flapping as you spin. You're laughing dizzy and a bit drunk from that ale sip. A man claps your shoulder saying you're not bad for a stranger, and you grin, the outsider label loosening. The bonfire's roaring, casting shadows that dance with the crowd. You notice the Lord's men watching their hands on sword hilts, and your buzz fades. This is still their world. You're just borrowing it for a day. You step back, catching your breath, and scan the square for more food or friendly faces. You spot a game archery with a straw target and a crowd betting eggs or apples. You're no Robin Hood, but you try borrowing a bow from a kid who's more interested in the pig roast. Your shot's wide, thwacking a tree, and the crowd hoots. You laugh it off, handing the bow back, and earn a bruised apple for effort. You bite into it worm-free for once, and feel like you're winning at life. Joke 2, if this is your Olympic debut, you're sticking to the ale-drinking event. You're starting to see the festival's deeper pulse, not just fun, but a pressure valve letting the village breathe before the grind resumes. The day stretches, the sun dipping low, painting the square gold. You help a woman carry a table, scoring a sliver of roasted pork, greasy, smoky, and the best thing you've tasted since forever. You're full a rare feeling, and the music's still thumping. You join a quieter group by the fire, listening to an old man spin a tale about a local saint who saved the village from flood. It's half legend, half sermon, and the crowd's rapt. You're drawn in the fire's warmth, easing your aches. The tavern's gossip feels far away. This is the village's heart, raw and hopeful. As night falls, the festival slows. The bonfire's embers glow, and the musicians pack up their bagpipe, mercifully silent. You're exhausted, but alive, your tunic damp with sweat and ale. You've danced, eaten, and laughed, things you forgot you could do. The reeve's rounding folks up, signaling the end, and you slip away, the square's glow fading behind you. Joke 3, if this is medieval fun, you're ready for the after-party. Just don't tell the priest. You trudge to your hut, the manor house's shadow long and cold, a reminder that tomorrow's back to work. Inside, you bank the fire, the smoke stinging your eyes. Your food stash is grim, half a cabbage, no bread, but your festival hall cheese apple feels like treasure. You stash them under the mattress, hoping rats don't get ideas. The nail's still in your belt, a small comfort after the bandit patrol's scare. You're weaving through this world field's church tavern, now festival collecting moments that make it bearable. You collapse on your straw bed, the music's echo in your head, and feel a flicker of belonging. The village is tough, but today it was yours. You close your eyes, the bonfire's warmth lingering and brace for tomorrow's return to the grind. You're still glowing from the festival's warmth, real food, wild dancing, and that rare moment of belonging. But the village lane's back to its muddy, grim self this morning. The sky's a sullen gray, the air heavy with damp, and the faint stink of yesterday's bonfire ashes. Your tunics stiff with sweat and ale stains, and your cloaks no match for the chill seeping into your bones. The straw mattress left you stiff, and your nail that lumpy blacksmith triumph is still tucked in your belt. Today's not about revelry or bandits you're in trouble. A minor infraction, something dumb like stepping on the Reeves' precious barley, has landed you in the Lord's court. You're pleading your case, and one wrong word could mean a fine or worse. Grab your bread crust brace for a grilling, and let's face medieval justice. You're herded toward the manor house, its stone walls looming like a judge's gavel. The Reeves at your side, his scowl deep enough to carve wood, muttering about your carelessness. You're not sure how you got here. Maybe you wandered into the wrong field after the festival, or maybe he's just got it out for you. The manor's courtyard is packed. Peasants, craftsmen, even the priest all watching like it's a public execution. Your stomach's in knots, and your cough, though faint, picks a bad time to twitch. You swallow it, clutching your cloak, and try to look innocent, which is hard when you're covered in mud and guilt. The court's held in the great hall, a cavernous room with a high timber ceiling and a fire roaring in a massive hearth. The Lord sits on a carved chair, his fur-lined cloak screaming wealth you'll never touch. He's younger than you expected, maybe 30, with a sharp jaw and eyes that don't miss a thing. The Reeve steps forward, listing your crime, trampling a barley strip, wasting the Lord's crop. It sounds worse than it was a drunken stumble, not sabotage, but the crowd's murmuring, and you're sweating despite the chill. You're allowed to speak, but your Middle English is shaky, and you're not exactly a lawyer. You stammer an apology, saying it was an accident, your voice barely carrying. Here's a hard fact. Medieval justice was swift and local, with lords holding courts to settle disputes and punish minor crimes. By the 14th century, manorial courts handled everything from theft to trespass, with fines or labor as common penalties. The whipping or the stocks weren't rare. You're hoping for a fine, but you've got no coins, no eggs, just a half cabbage and a lumpy nail. The Lord leans forward, asking if you've got anything to offer. You mention your work in the fields, your patrol against bandits, even your sad nail hoping to sound useful. The crowd snickers, and the Reeve rolls his eyes, but the Lord's expression is unreadable. Then comes the quirky tidbit some courts used compurgation, where locals swore on your character to clear you. You glance at the crowd, hoping someone, anyone, will vouch for you. The festival's ale-sharing woman is there, but she's avoiding your eyes. The blacksmith who called you not hopeless is absent. You're on your own, and it stings. Historians still argue whether compurgation was about trust or just bribing friends to lie. Either way, you're fresh out of allies. You try another angle, promising extra labor to replant the barley. The Lord raises an eyebrow, and you're not sure if it's mercy or amusement. The Reeve counters, pushing for a fine 2 hens or a week's wages. You don't have hens, and wages are a fantasy for a serf like you. You're starting to panic, your hands clammy under your cloak. Joke 1, if this is medieval court TV, you're the defendant nobody roots for. You try again, offering to repair the field and help the weaver anything to avoid the stocks. The priest steps in, suggesting mercy since you're new and the damage was small. You're grateful, but his tone implies you owe him, and you're already drowning in debts. Weaver Tanner. Now this. The Lord deliberates, his fingers drumming on the chair. The hall's quiet. The fires crackle loud in your ears. You're hyper-aware of the crowd's stares, the Reeves smirk, the priest's calculating nod. You're not just fighting for barley. You're fighting to stay in the village's fragile web. One wrong move, and you're the outcast, the village idiot from that tavern tale. You stand straighter, trying to look like a serf worth keeping, but your holy shoes and patched tunic aren't helping your case. The Lord finally speaks his voice, calm but firm. You'll work 3 days in the manor's fields, no pay, and replant the barley. It's not mercy, but it's not the stocks, so you nod relief flooding you. You're dismissed, the crowd parting as you shuffle out. The Reeve grabs your arm, warning you to step lightly from now on, and you mumble agreement, your heart still racing. Outside the courtyard's emptying, folks whispering about your sentence. You catch a snippet, someone thinks you got off easy. Another says the Lord's testing you. You're not sure what to make of it, but you're alive, and that's enough. You trudge back to the lane, the manor's shadow long and cold, a reminder of who holds your leash. You stop by the well, needing water to calm your nerves. The water's icy, splashing your face, and you rinse your hands, the cold dust from the forge still stubborn. A woman's there, the one who shared ale at the festival. She asks what happened, and you give the short version, leaving out your nail pitch. She nods, saying the Lord's fair, but likes his dues. You're starting to see the court's real game, not just justice, but control, keeping every serf in line. You thank her, fill your pitcher, and head back, the village's hum a faint comfort after the hall's tension. Joke 2. If this is due process, you're ready for a medieval refund. Back at your hut, you collapse by the fire, the smoke stinging your eyes. Your food stash is dire, half a cabbage, no bread. The festival's cheese and apple long gone. You're too rattled to eat, but you force down a sip of water, your hands still trembling. The nails in your belt a small defiance, and you stash the iron scrap and woven patch under your mattress. You're collecting bits of this world's skills debts, now a court record, and it's shaping you whether you like it or not. You step outside, needing air. The lane's busy, kids chasing a dog, a cart rattling, the Reeves' voice barking somewhere. The festival's joy feels distant, replaced by the grind's reality. You're starting to feel the village's wheat fields, tavern, church, now court. Every misstep's a lesson, every debt a chain. You're surviving, but it's a tightrope, and the Lord's eyes are always watching. Joke 3. If you're a model serf, the manor's hiring for most likely to trip. You head back inside, bank at the fire, and crawl onto your straw bed, the court's verdict heavy in your chest. 3 days' labor looms, but you're still here, muddy and stubborn, ready for whatever this village throws next. You're still reeling from the Lord's court, the sting of those 3 days' unpaid labor, burning hotter than your hut's smoky fire. The village lane's a muddy slog under a sky spitting drizzle, the air thick with damp wool and rotting straw. Your tunic's a patchwork of grime, and your cloak's more wet than warm. That lumpy nail still in your belt, a reminder of your blacksmith blunder, and your straw mattress left you stiff as a board. Today's not about justice or festivals. You're tackling a new challenge, literacy. You're seeking out a grumpy scribe to learn reading, hoping to decode this world's secrets. Grab your shrinking cabbage brace for a lecture, and let's see if you can scribble without making a fool of yourself. You trudge toward the church where the scribe supposedly hangs out. The village is buzzing carts, creaking kids, splashing in puddles, and the Reeve's voice barking about a broken fence. Your court sentence looms, but you're squeezing in this lesson first, hoping it'll give you an edge. The church's stone tower cuts through the mist, its bell silent for now. Next to it, a small lean-to houses the scribe, a hunched man with ink-stained fingers and a scowl like he's allergic to people. You knock clutching your cabbage as a bribe, and he glares, his eyes narrowing like you've just insulted his quill. Inside the lean-to's cramped smelling of wax and mildew. Parchments are stacked on a wobbly table alongside inkwells and goose-feather quills. The scribe's name is Godwin, and he's as welcoming as a tax collector. You explain you want to read, maybe write to better serve the village. It's a half-lie you're hoping to read signs letters, or anything that'll keep you from tripping into another court mess. Godwin snorts, saying literacy's for clerks, not serfs. But your cabbage softens him. He takes it muttering about wasting his time, and hands you a scrap of parchment and a quill. You're in barely. You sit on a stool, the quill awkward in your blistered hand. Godwin starts with the alphabet scratching letters on a wax tablet, blocky, unfamiliar shapes that look more like runes than ABCs. Here's a hard fact. Literacy in the 14th century was rare among peasants, with maybe 5% able to read basic Latin or English. Scribes, often tied to the church, kept records for lords or clergy, writing in Latin for official documents. You're aiming lower, just enough to read a market sign or a Reeves order. Godwin's droning about A is for Ave Maria, and you're already lost your quill dripping ink like a leaky faucet. You try copying an A, but it looks like a drunk triangle. Godwin sighs, correcting your grip, his patience thinner than your cloak. You're sweating despite the chill, the parchment curling under your clumsy strokes. A quirky tidbit some scribes believed riding with a raven's feather brought wisdom, while goose quills were for common work. Godwin's using a goose quill, and you're pretty sure he thinks you're commoner than dirt. Historians still argue whether these feather beliefs were superstition or craft pride. Either way, your quill's not helping. You manage a wobbly A, and Godwin grunts, which might be approval or disgust. The lesson drags your hand, cramping as you move to B and C. Godwin's teaching style is half lecture, half insult, calling your letters pig scratches. You bite your tongue, remembering the court's lesson, don't sass the boss. You're starting to see why literacy's rare parchments, pricey quills are fussy, and teachers like Godwin make you want to quit. Still, you push on copying a simple word man, and it's almost legible. You're not Shakespeare, but you're not illiterate either. Joke 1, if this is adult education, you're flunking medieval kindergarten. You keep scratching ink, smudging your fingers, and pray for a miracle. Godwin shifts to reading, pointing to a prayer scrawled on a parchment. It's Latin, and you catch nothing except Domine. He translates grudgingly into Middle English, and you try to follow your brain straining like it's lifting a plow. You're picking up fragments, words for breadwork sin, and it's thrilling like cracking a code. You're not fluent, but you're not clueless, and that's power in a world where ignorance keeps you chained. Godwin notices your focus and softens slightly, saying you're not entirely hopeless. It's the closest thing to a compliment you've gotten since the blacksmith. You take a break, nibbling your bread crust outside the lean-to. The drizzle's stopped, but the lane's a swamp, and your shoes are soggy. A kid runs by shouting about a lost pig, and you're tempted to ditch this for the tavern's gossip. But you're hooked. Reading could mean understanding the Reeves orders, dodging fines, maybe even spying on the Lord's notices. You head back in, ready for round 2. Godwin's now teaching numbers scratching 1 and 2 on the tablet. You copy them your quill steadier and manage a decent 3. Progress, maybe. The scribe's warming up, telling a story about a clerk who miswrote a tax record and got flogged. It's a warning literacy's a tool, but a dangerous one if you cross the wrong person. You nod, filing it away with the court's verdict and the tavern's bandit tales. You're starting to see the village's layers, fields, church, gossip, now words, and every layer's a chance to survive or slip. You try writing your name, the letters shaky, but yours and Godwin doesn't scoff. It's a small victory, but you'll take it. Joke 2, if you're a scribe, the village is hiring for ink smudge specialist. The lesson ends, and Godwin keeps the cabbage, saying you can return if you bring more. You're out of food bribes, but you're not giving up. You thank him, clutching your parchment scrap, and step into the lane. The village feels sharper now. Signs on stalls, notches on fence posts. Even the church's carved cross seem like puzzles you could solve. You stop by the well, rinsing ink from your hands, the water like ice. A woman's there, gossiping about the festival's aftermath. Someone stole a cheese wheel, and the Reeves livid. You listen, your new letters swirling in your head, and wonder if you could read the Reeves punishment list. Back at your hut, you stash the parchment under your mattress, with the nail iron scrap and woven patch. Your food's grim, no bread, just a wilting cabbage half, and pottage feels like too much effort. You sip water, your fingers still inky, and feel a spark of defiance. Literacy's a crack in the village's chains, Lord Reeve priest, and you're prying it open. The manor house looms outside its walls, mocking your small rebellion. You're still a serf, still sentenced to 3 days' labor, but you've got man and 3 in your arsenal now. Joke 3. If reading's power, you're the medieval equivalent of a flickering bulb. You bank the fire, the smoke stinging your eyes, and crawl onto your straw bed. The village keeps turning mud gossip work, but you're carving out a piece of it, letter by letter. The court's verdict, the festival's joy, the tavern's tales. Now Godwin's grudging lesson. They're threads in a tapestry you're starting to weave. You're not a scholar, but you're not a fool either, and that's enough for now. You close your eyes, the quill's weight lingering in your hand, and brace for tomorrow's grind, ready to face it with a few more words in your pocket. You're still clutching that inky parchment scrap, your shaky man, and 3 a small victory against the village's relentless grind. The morning's cold, the lane, a muddy quagmire under a sky spitting drizzle. Your tunic's a disaster, patched, stained, and itching like it's got a personal grudge. Your cloak's damp, your straw mattress left you stiff, and that lumpy nail still in your belt, a reminder of your blacksmith flop. Today's not about words or courts. You're venturing into the dark forest to hunt tracking game with a group of villagers. Your stomach's growling, your half cabbage isn't cutting it, and the tavern's pork memory is torture. Grab your stick from the bandit patrol brace for a trek, and let's hope you don't end up as the prey. You meet the hunting party at the village edge, a grim crew of men with bows, slings, and weathered faces. The leader, a lean guy with a scar across his cheek, hands you a sling and a pouch of stones. You're not sure if it's a weapon or a kid's toy, but you nod, trying to look competent. The forest looms, its oaks gnarled and shadows deep, the same place where bandit rumors swirled. You're still spooked from that patrol, but hunger's a stronger motivator than fear. The group sets off the path, swallowing you in green, and silence the village's hum fading behind. The forest's a different world. Damp moss, underfoot air heavy with pine and decay, every snap making you jump. The men move quietly, eyes scanning for tracks or signs of deer, rabbits, anything edible. You're supposed to watch for movement, but your sling's awkward, and you're more likely to hit yourself than a target. The leader points to a scuff in the mud, a deer track, he whispers, and you nod, pretending you see it. Here's a hard fact. Hunting was a lifeline for medieval peasants, but tightly controlled. By the 14th century, lords owned most game, and poaching could mean fines. Or worse, your 3-day labor sentence is bad enough without adding deer thief to your rap sheet. You follow the tracks, your stick clutched like a security blanket. The leader shows you how to swing the sling, a smooth flick you can't replicate. Your first try sends a stone into a bush, startling a bird that makes everyone glare. You mutter an apology, you're Middle English clumsy, and try again, missing by a mile. The men don't laugh. They're too focused, but you feel like the village idiot from that tavern tale. Joke 1, if this is survival of the fittest, you're the one getting eaten first. You keep quiet, trailing the group, your eyes darting between trees for anything that moves. A quirky tidbit, some hunters used smoking sticks, torches soaked in herbs to drive game from hiding spots. The leader's got one unlit for now, and you're glad it smells like the healer's poultice, and you're not ready for another whiff of that. Historians still argue whether these sticks were practical or just ritual to appease forest spirits. Either way, you're hoping for a rabbit, not a ghost. The group pauses, the leader crouching to check a snare. It's empty, but he resets it, his hands quick and sure. You're learning watching how they read the forest like you're trying to read Godwin's parchment. You're tasked with carrying a bundle of ropes for more snares, the coarse fibers digging into your shoulder. The forest's quiet, but not peaceful. Every rustle feels like a threat, bandit or beast. You remember the tavern's ghost story, that night haunting the woods, and shake it off. Focus. You tell yourself, adjusting your cloak to keep the drizzle out. The group spreads out, and you're paired with a younger hunter, barely 16, who's better with a sling than you'll ever be. He points to a faint trail, whispering rabbit, and you nod, heart pounding. You're not just hunting food, you're proving you belong. You creep forward, sling-ready stones heavy in your pouch. The kid slings a stone smooth and fast, and a rabbit bolts from the underbrush. You try to follow your stone, flying wild, thwacking a tree. The kid sighs, but doesn't mock you, instead showing you his grip. You try again, and this time the stone's closer, not a hit, but progress. The group's luckier. A man's bow fells a small deer, its body limp in the ferns. The leader grunts approval, and you help drag it the weight, pulling at your sore arms. It's not your kill, but you're part of this, and it feels like a win. The hunt continues, the men setting more snares, while you haul ropes and try not to trip. You're sweating despite the cold. Your tunic soaked your shoes, mushy with forest muck. The kid bags a rabbit with his sling, and you're jealous, but impressed, clapping his shoulder like you're not the weak link. The leader lights the smoking stick, its acrid smell driving birds from a thicket, but no game follows. You're relieved no more hauling, but the group's disappointed muttering about slim pickings. You're starting to see the stakes. A bad hunt means hunger, and your cabbage won't last forever. Joke 2. If this is farm to table, you're ready to farm a burger instead. The group heads back, the deer and rabbit slung over shoulders. You're carrying ropes, your sling useless but still in hand. The forest spits you out at the village edge, the manor house's shadow waiting like a judge. The reeve's there, inspecting the hall, and you keep your head down, still stinging from court. The leader hands over the deer to the lord's men. Half the kill goes to the manor, a bitter reminder of who's boss. You're left with the rabbit split among the group, and your share's a leg small but meaty. Back at your hut, you stash the rabbit leg with your dwindling cabbage, the nail iron scrap and woven patch under your mattress. You're too tired for pottage, so you nibble the last of your bread, its grit a familiar foe, and sip water. The hunt's left you sore, but proud you didn't bag anything, but you didn't die either. The forest's dangers, bandits, ghosts, or just bad aim are real, but so's the village's grit. You bank the fire, the smoke stinging your eyes, and feel a flicker of strength. You're not a hunter, but you're learning, and that's currency here. Joke 3. If you're a marksman, the forest's hiring for tree assassin. You step outside the lane quiet as evening falls, the manor's walls looming. The hunt's hall, the court's verdict, the tavern's tales. They're pieces of this world you're stitching together, like your clumsy woven patch. You're still a serf, still sentenced to labor, but you've got a rabbit leg and a sling lesson. The village keeps turning mudwork hunger, and you're turning with it one shaky step at a time. You crawl onto your straw bed, the forest silence in your ears, and brace for tomorrow's grind, hoping your next hunt doesn't end with you as the target. You're still buzzing from the forest hunt, that rabbit leg stashed in your hut, a small triumph over hunger. The village lane's a frozen muck this morning, the air biting with a winter chill that makes your breath cloud. Your tunic's a grimy patchwork, your cloak barely fending off the cold, and your straw mattress left you aching like you've been trampled by oxen. The lumpy nails in your belt, a reminder of your blacksmith fumble, and your 3-day labor sentence from the Lord's court looms. Today's not about hunting or scribes. You're enduring a harsh winter, struggling to stay warm as snow dusts the village. Grab your dwindling cabbage brace for the freeze, and let's fight to keep the cold at bay. You step outside the lane, crunching under your holy shoes, already numb at the toes. Snowflakes swirl, sticking to your cloak, and the village feels hushed. Huts huddled under white dusted thatch, smoke curling weakly from chimneys. The reeves nowhere in sight probably hold up somewhere warmer, but you're not that lucky. Your hut's a drafty disaster, the wind sneaking through every crack you tried to patch. Your first task is the fire. It's your lifeline, and it's barely smoldering. You kneel by the pit hands, shaking and coax the embers with straw, praying it catches. The smoke stings your eyes, but a flame flickers, and you're not freezing yet. You're low on firewood, the pile outside your hut, down to a few soggy sticks. The village's communal woodlot is your only shot, but it's a trek, and the snow's thickening. You wrap your cloak tighter, grab a basket, and trudge out the cold, knifing through your tunic. The lane's deserted, most folks hiding indoors, and the manor house looms its stone walls mocking your shivering. You reach the woodlot, a scrubby patch of felled branches, and start gathering your fingers, numb as you snap twigs. Here's a hard fact. Winter was brutal for medieval peasants, with firewood often rationed by lords. By the 14th century, deforestation made wood scarce, and serfs like you scavenged what you could, risking fines for cutting fresh trees. You haul branches, their damp weight pulling at your sore arms, and spot a kid doing the same, his nose red and dripping. He's faster used to this, and you're jealous of his grit. You manage a decent load, but a branch snags your cloak, tearing a new hole. Great. You're too cold to care, dragging your basket back the snow now ankle deep. Your shoes are soaked, and you're starting to lose feeling in your feet. Joke 1, if this is winter wonderland, you're ready to hibernate until spring. You're learning fast warmth is survival, and you're one bad fire from turning into a surf cycle. Back at your hut, you stack the wood-shaking snow from your cloak. The fire's stronger now, but the hut's still chilly, the wind whistling through that hole you patched with mud. You grab your woven scrap from the weaver and stuff it into the crack, a flimsy fix, but better than nothing. A quirky tidbit some peasants slept with their animals for warmth, letting pigs or goats share the hut. You glance at your straw mattress, tempted to adopt a stray hen, but the village pigs aren't exactly cuddly. Historians still argue whether this was common or a last resort in bitter winters. Either way, you're not there yet, but the cold's pushing you close. You turn to your food stash, half a cabbage, a rabbit leg, no bread. The rabbit's tempting, but you're saving it for a real crisis. You chop the cabbage with your blunt knife hands trembling and toss it into a pot with water. Pottage again, but you're too cold for pride. The fire's heat barely reaches the pot, and the water takes forever to simmer. You're starving the festival's pork, a distant dream, and your stomach's louder than the wind. You stir the pottage, its gray sludge, mocking your cooking skills, and pray it's edible. It's not, it tastes like wet leaves, but you choke it down warmth, mattering more than flavor. You're starting to feel the winter's weight, not just cold, but isolation. The lane's empty, the village turned inward, every hut a fortress against the snow. You're alone, no tavern, gossip, or festival dances to lift you. You bank the fire, piling ashes to keep it alive, and wrap your cloak around you like a cocoon. Your shoes are drying by the fire, but they're falling apart, and you're regretting not bartering harder with the tanner. You stuff them with straw for insulation, a trick from the weaver's wife, but it's a band-aid on a broken leg. You need better gear, but you've got no eggs, no coins, just debts, and a nail. Joke 2. If this is cozy season, you're ready for a medieval space heater. You step outside, needing more wood before night falls. The snow's heavier, the lane a blur of white, and you're shivering hard. You spot the blacksmith's forge glowing in the distance, its heat a cruel tease. You're tempted to beg for a spot by his fire, but your court sentence means no favors. You're on your own. You gather more twigs, your basket half full, and hurry back, the cold biting your face. The manor's shadow feels heavier today, its walls a reminder of the Lord's warm halls, while you're here, freezing in a hut that's one gust from collapsing. Inside, you feed the fire, the new wood hissing as it burns. The pottage is gone, and you're still hungry, but you're saving the rabbit leg like it's gold. You check your stash, nail iron scrap, woven patch parchment. Scrap, all useless against the cold. You're starting to feel trapped, the winter, a new kind of chain. The village's rhythm fields, church hunts, slows in this freeze, and you're fighting to keep up. You wrap your cloak tighter, the tear letting in a draft, and sit by the fire, its warmth a fragile shield. You're learning winter's not just weather, it's a test, and you're barely passing. You hear a shout outside, someone stuck in the snow, a cart wheel broken. You're tempted to ignore it, but you grab your stick and head out the cold, slapping you awake. It's a farmer cursing as he tries to free his cart. You help pushing while he pulls your hands numb but stubborn. The cart lurches free, and he grunts, thanks tossing you a small log from his load. It's not much, but it's fuel, and you haul it back, feeling a flicker of pride. The village is quiet, but it's still alive, and you're part of it even in this freeze. Joke 3. If you're a winter warrior, the village is hiring for shivering serf. You bank the fire again, the log crackling, and check your shoes still damp, but wearable. The hut's warmer barely, and you're starting to feel the fight in you. The court sentence, the hunt's hall, the scribe's letters. They're threads in a tapestry you're weaving, and winter's just another stitch. You crawl onto your straw bed, the straw poking through your cloak, and pull it tight. The snow's still falling, the wind howling, but your fire's burning, and that's enough. You close your eyes, the cold's bite lingering, and brace for tomorrow's battle, ready to face the freeze with whatever you've got left. You're still shivering from winter's grip, the memory of that meager fire and soggy cloak haunting you as you wake to another icy morning. The village lane's a frozen sludge, snow crusted over mud, and the air bites your face like a spiteful dog. Your tunic's a patchwork of misery, your shoes are more straw than leather, and your straw mattress is a torture device. The rabbit leg and cabbage half in your hut are your only food, and that lumpy nail in your belt feels like a cruel joke. Today's not about surviving the cold. You're headed to the creaky windmill to help grind grain, a task as grueling as it sounds. Grab your cloak brace for splinters, and let's hope you don't break the mill or yourself. You trudge toward the windmill, a rickety silhouette on the village's edge, its sails creaking under a weak wind. The lane's quiet, most folks huddled indoors, but the miller's expecting you. Your court sentence's first day of labor starts here. The miller's a stout man with flour-dusted hands and a temper shorter than your food stash. He's grumbling about the weather, the lord, and lazy serfs as you approach. You're not thrilled either, but you nod, keeping your head down to avoid his wrath. The windmill's a beast of wood and stone, groaning like it's as tired as you are, and you're already dreading the work. Inside, the air's thick with flour dust stinging your eyes and coating your throat. The mill's heart is a massive grindstone, turned by gears linked to the sails outside. Your job's simple, but brutal. Haul grain sacks, feed the hopper, and sweep the flour into barrels. The sacks are heavy, at least 50 pounds, and your arms scream as you drag one to the platform. The miller shows you how to pour grain without spilling, but your first try scatters barley across the floor. He curses, and you scramble to sweep it up the broom's bristles worn to stubs. Joke 1, if this is farm to flour, you're ready to boycott bread. Here's a hard fact. Windmills were game changers in the 14th century, grinding grain faster than hand mills and boosting village food supplies. But they were finicky, breaking down in weak winds or storms, and millers were often distrusted, accused of shorting flour to skim profits. You're feeling that now the miller's watching you, like you're the one stealing, not him. You haul another sack, your back aching from winter's wood gathering, and feed the hopper, the grindstones rumble shaking the floor. Flour dust clouds the air, and you're coughing again, the healer's tea a distant memory. You tie your cloak over your mouth, hoping it helps. The work's relentless, haul, pour, sweep, repeat. The miller barks orders, pointing out every spilled grain like it's a personal insult. You're trying, but your hands are clumsy, and the sacks keep slipping. A quirky tidbit, some millers hung charms like horseshoes in their mills to ward off bad luck or gremlins that jammed gears. You spot one above the door, rusty and bent, and wonder if it's working. Historians still argue whether these charms were superstition or a way to dodge blame for breakdowns. Either way, you're not counting on luck when the miller's glaring. You pause to catch your breath, leaning on the broom, and the miller snaps at you to move. You hustle, dragging another sack, your shoes crunching on stray grain. The windmill's sails creak louder, a gust picking up, and the grindstone speeds up, spitting more dust. You're sneezing now, your eyes watering, but you keep sweeping the flour piling like snow. The miller tosses you a crust of bread, his version of a break, and you eat it, the grit mixing with flour dust in your mouth. It's better than your cabbage, but not by much. You're starting to hate this mill, its noise, its dust, and the miller's scowl. The other workers, 2 men and a boy, are faster, their movements practiced. The boy, maybe 12, shows you how to angle the hopper to avoid spills. His hands nimble despite the cold. You try his trick, and it works, earning a nod from him, but nothing from the miller. You're learning slowly, but every mistake feels like a strike against you. The court sentence hangs heavy, 2 more days of this plus replanting barley. You're a serf, not a slacker, but the miller doesn't care. You're just another pair of hands, and you're barely keeping up. Joke 2. If this is job training, you're ready to retire to a cave. You shift to barrel duty, scooping flour with a wooden scoop, your arms trembling from the sacks. The barrels are heavy, and you're careful not to spill flour's gold here, and the miller's already suspicious. You overhear him muttering about short waits and the Reeves' latest audit. The tavern's gossip about his cheating feels truer now, but you're not snitching. You scoop pack and seal a barrel, your hands dusted white, and move to the next. The grindstones rumble, a constant drone in your ears. The day drags, the windmill's creaks and groans your soundtrack. You're exhausted, your tunic soaked with sweat despite the cold, and your shoes are caked with flour and mud. The boy helps you lift a barrel, his strength surprising, and you're grateful for the kid's quiet kindness. The miller's still barking, but you're finding a Rhythm Hall pour sweep scoop. It's not pretty, but it's progress, and you're not getting yelled at as much. You're starting to see the mills roll, grain to flour, flour to bread, bread to survival. You're part of that chain, however small, and it's humbling. As the sun dips, the miller calls a halt, the sails slowing with a final groan. You're dismissed, your arms like lead, your face a mask of flour. You snag a pinch of flour as payment, tucking it into your belt with the nail. The miller doesn't notice or doesn't care, and you trudge back to the lane, the snow lighter, but still falling. You stop by the well, rinsing your hands, and face the icy water, a shock. A woman's there gossiping about the miller's wife, and you listen, too tired to join in. The village's pulse fields court hunts now. Mills keeps beating, and you're caught in it. Back at your hut, you collapse by the fire, the flour dust mixing with smoke. Your stash is grim rabbit leg cabbage, half now a pinch of flour. You're tempted to cook the rabbit, but you save it, boiling the cabbage with your new flour for a thicker pottage. It's bland, lumpy, but warm, and you're too hungry to care. You eat the fire's faint heat, easing your aches, and feel the winter's weight. The mills grind the court sentence, the forest's shadows. They're all chains, but you're forging your own links, however weak. Joke 3. If you're a miller's apprentice, the village is hiring for dust magnet. You bank the fire, the wind, howling outside, and check your stash. Nail iron scrap, woven patch parchment. They're scraps of a life you're building one muddy step at a time. The manor looms its warmth a world away, but you're here, alive, with a belly full of pottage. You crawl onto your straw bed, the straw poking through your cloak, and pull it tight. The mill's creak echoes in your head, but so does the boy's nod, a small victory in a hard day. You close your eyes, the cold's bite softer now, and brace for tomorrow's grind, ready to face it with flour in your veins. You're still coated in flour dust from the windmill's grind, your arms throbbing like you've been wrestling oxen. The village lane's a frozen quagmire snow, crusted over mud, and the morning air stabs your lungs with every breath. Your tunic's a grimy tapestry of patches and stains. Your cloak barely fending off the chill, and your straw mattress left you stiff as a plank. That rabbit leg and pinch of flour are your lifeline, the lumpy nail in your belt, a sad trophy. Today's not about mills or winter's bite. You're sailing on a rickety boat down the river tasked with hauling goods for the village. Your court sentence's second day looms, and you're praying you don't sink or freeze. Grab your cloak brace for a leaky ride, and let's navigate the medieval waters. You trudge to the riverbank, the village's hum muted by snow. The river's a sluggish gray ribbon, its banks icy and littered with reeds. A flat-bottomed boat bobs against a creaky dock, its planks weathered and patched like your tunic. The boatman, a wiry man with a face like old leather, is loading barrels ale maybe, or salted fish for a nearby market town. You're here to help, per the reeve's orders, your labor owed to the Lord. The boatman barely glances at you, pointing to a stack of crates with a grunt. You grab one, its weight pulling at your sore arms, and stagger aboard the deck, swaying under your holy shoes. The boat's a floating death trap, gaps in the planks, ooze water, and the oars look ready to snap. You stack the crate, your breath clouding, and notice the boatman's tying ropes with practiced knots. You're no sailor. Your closest water experience was a lazy canoe rental, and you're already seasick from nerves. The river's calm, but ice patches glint near the banks, and you're not thrilled about a dunk in freezing water. Joke 1, if this is cruise life, you're ready to swim back to the 21st century. You haul another crate, your back screaming, and pray the boat holds. Here's a hard fact. Rivers were vital trade routes in the 14th century, moving goods like grain, wool, and ale between villages and towns. Boats like this one were common, but dangerous leaks. Storms or bandits could sink a trip fast. You're feeling that now, as you load barrels, the boat rocking with every step. The boatman mutters about keeping weight even, and you try, but your crates are lopsided, earning a scowl. You adjust them, your hands numb from the cold, and notice a patch of ice ahead. The boatman steers with a pole, his eyes sharp, and you're glad he's not as green as you. You're tasked with bailing water, a bucket in hand, as you scoop from the boat's sloshy bottom. The water's icy, soaking your shoes, and you're shivering hard. A quirky tidbit, some boatmen hung fish bones on their boats, believing they brought safe passage. You spot one dangling from the bow, brittle and gray, and wonder if it's working. Historians still argue whether these charms were superstition or a nod to river spirits. Either way, you're bailing like your life depends on it, because it might. The boatman grunts approval, but you're too cold to care about his rare praise. The river bends, and you spot another boat, its crew waving as they pass. The boatman shouts a greeting, mentioning a market deal, and you listen, hoping for tips to stretch your rabbit leg. The other crew warns of a shallow spot ahead, and you brace, gripping the boat's edge as the boatman pulls, carefully. The hull scrapes something rock or ice, and you freeze expecting a leak. It holds, and you exhale, your hands trembling. You're starting to respect the boatman's skill. This isn't just a job, it's a dance with a river that doesn't care if you sink. You bail faster, the bucket's weight pulling at your blisters. The work's grueling haul crates, bail water, watch for ice. Your cloak soaked, your tunic chafing, and your shoes are mush. The boatman tosses you a strip of dried fish, tough as leather, but edible, and you chew at the salt, waking you up. You're learning the river's rhythm: pull, steer, bail, repeat. You try poling the boatman's nod, grudging as you push against the current. You're clumsy, the pole slipping, but you don't capsize, and that's a win. Joke 2, if this is team rowing, you're the guy who flips the boat at practice. You hand the pole back, your arms like jelly, and focus on bailing the water, never stopping. The market town's docks appear a cluster of boats and stalls under snow-dusted roofs. You help unload hauling barrels to a merchant who's arguing prices with the boatman. You're silent, your Middle English too shaky for haggling, but you watch, noting the merchant's tricks: short waits, quick counts. The tavern's miller gossip feels real here, and you're glad you're just muscle, not a trader. The boatman secures a deal trading ale for cloth and salt, and you help load the return cargo your back, begging for mercy. The merchant tosses you a scrap of bread, stale but soft, and you devour it, your stomach grateful. The return trip's quieter, the river darker, as clouds thicken. You're bailing your hands raw, and the boatman steering his fishbone charm, swaying. You're starting to see the rivers roll, goods flow, villages eat. The Lord gets his cut. You're a cog in that machine, your labor sentence binding you tighter to it. The boat scrapes another shallow, and you bail faster, your heart racing. The boatman curses the wind, and you're praying for dry land. You're not a sailor, but you're surviving, and that's enough. The village's docks appear a muddy welcome, and you help unload, your arms numb but stubborn. You're dismissed, the boatman grunting thanks and tossing you a pinch of salt currency in a world of bland pottage. You trudge back to the lane, snow sticking to your cloak, the manor's shadow looming. You stop by the well, rinsing your hands in water, so cold it burns, and overhear a woman talking about a river trader scam. You're too tired to join in, but you're learning every trip, every deal's a lesson in this world's edges. Back at your hut, you collapse by the fire, the smoke stinging your eyes. Your stash, rabbit leg, cabbage, half flour pinch, now salt, feels like treasure. You boil cabbage with flour and salt, the pottage less grim, and eat the warmth, easing your aches. Joke 3. If you're a river rat, the village is hiring for soggy surf. You bank the fire, the boat sway lingering in your bones, and check your stash, nail iron scrap, woven patch parchment. They're scraps of a life you're clawing together, one wet step at a time. The river's dangers, ice leak scams are real, but so's your grit. The court sentence, the mill's dust, the hunt's haul. They're threads in a tapestry you're weaving, and the river's just another stitch. You crawl onto your straw bed, the straw poking through your soaked cloak, and pull it tight. The manor looms outside, but you're here alive with salt in your pocket. You close your eyes, the river's rush in your ears, and brace for tomorrow's grind, ready to face it with waterlogged stubbornness. You're still waterlogged from yesterday's river adventure, your cloak stiff with dried mud, and your tunic reeking of fish and flour dust. The village lane's a frozen mess, snow-packed mud crunching under your soggy shoes, and the morning air's so sharp it stings your face. Your straw mattress left you aching, and that rabbit leg in your hut's starting to feel like a lifeline you're scared to touch. The lumpy nail in your belt, your blacksmith failure is a small comfort against the cold. Today's your final day of the Lord's Court sentence, and you're not grinding grain or sailing. You're witnessing a knight's training, watching armored warriors spar in the manor's shadow. Grab your pinch of salt brace for some medieval machismo, and let's hope you don't get drafted into a duel. You trudge toward the manor house, its stone walls looming under a sky heavy with clouds. The Reeve's waiting at the courtyard gate, his scowl deeper than the river you nearly sank in. Your sentence's last task is to help set up the training ground, hauling straw dummies and wooden stakes for the night's practice. You're not thrilled. Your arms are still screaming from the windmill and boat, and the cold's making every joint creak. The courtyard's bustling servants, scurrying horses, snorting, and a crowd of villagers gathering to gawk. You're just labor, but you're curious. Knights are the rock stars of this world, and you're about to see them up close. You start hauling straw dummies their weight lighter than grain sacks, but awkward straw poking through your tunic. The Reeve points to a patch of frozen ground where you drive stakes, your hands numb from the cold. The knights arrive, 3 of them clad in chainmail that clinks like coins, their helmets gleaming despite the gloom. They're young, maybe mid-20s, with the kind of swagger you'd expect from guys who swing swords for a living. The head knight, a broad man with a scarred lip, barks orders at a squire who's scrambling with shields and blunt swords. You keep your head down, hammering stakes, but you're stealing glances drawn to the spectacle. Here's a hard fact: knights were the medieval elite trained from boyhood, in combat and loyalty to their lord. By the 14th century, their role was shifting less about constant warfare, more about enforcing the Lord's will and showing off at tournaments. You're seeing that now as they start sparring their blunt swords, clanging against shields, the sound echoing off the manor walls. You pause, leaning on a stake, and watch them move, fast, precise like a choreographed fight scene. Your stick from the bandit patrol feels pathetic in comparison, and you're glad you're just the help, not a target. The head knight lands a blow, knocking his opponent's shield aside, and the crowd cheers. You join in, clapping awkwardly, but the Reeve glares, so you grab another dummy. The knights switch to lances, charging straw targets on horseback, and you're mesmerized despite the cold. The horses are massive, their hooves churning the snow, and the lances splinter with every hit. A quirky tidbit: some knights rubbed herbs on their armor, believing it brought strength or luck in battle. You spot a faint green smear on the head knight's gauntlet, rosemary maybe, and wonder if it's true. Historians still argue whether these rituals were superstition or a psychological boost. Either way, you're not rubbing cabbage on your nail for luck. Your job shifts to clearing broken lances, the wood sharp and splintery. You're careful your hands already raw, and dodge a horse that nearly clips you. The squire snickers, but the head knight nods a flicker of respect for your hustle. You're not a warrior, but you're not useless, and that's enough. The training's intense, swords, lances, then hand to hand the knights grappling in the snow. You're hauling water, now filling buckets for the horses, the icy slosh soaking your shoes. Joke 1, if this is Fight Club, you're the guy mopping the ring. You're learning, though, knights aren't just muscle. They're the Lord's fist, and you're in their world. The Reeve calls a break, and you slump against a fence, your breath clouding. The knights dismount, joking with the crowd, their chainmail glinting. A woman tosses an apple to the squire, who catches it with a grin. You're tempted to scrounge food, but your court sentence keeps you moving. You haul more stakes, your arms like lead, and notice the villagers' mix of awe and fear. The knights are heroes, but also enforcers. If you'd gotten a harsher sentence, they'd be the ones dragging you to the stocks. You're glad to be on stake duty, not their bad side. The training resumes now with archery. The knights fire at straw targets, their arrows thudding with precision you'll never match with your sling. You're tasked with retrieving arrows, dodging stray shots, and slipping in the snow. One grazes your cloak, and you yelp, earning a laugh from the squire. You're not amused, but you keep going, stacking arrows and avoiding the reeve's eye. The head knight's watching now, his scarred lip twitching like he's sizing you up. You're not sure if it's a test or just boredom, but you hustle, proving you're not the lazy serf from court. Joke 2. If you're a knight's apprentice, the village is hiring for arrow magnet. The day drags the cold, sinking deeper, your tunic soaked with sweat and snow. You're starting to see the knight's world, strength, skill, and loyalty to a lord who's barely shown his face. The manor's walls loom a reminder of your place, a serf sentenced scraping by. You're dismissed as the sun dips the reeve, grunting that your sentence is done. Relief hits, but you're too tired to celebrate. You snag a splintered lance piece as payment, tucking it with your nail, a trophy of survival. You trudge to the well, rinsing your hands in water, so cold it burns. A woman's there, gossiping about the knights, one's rumored to be the lord's bastard son. You listen, filing it with the tavern's tales and the scribe's warnings. The village's pulse, fields, mills, rivers. Now night's beats on, and you're caught in it, a muddy cog. Back at your hut, you collapse by the fire, the smoke stinging your eyes. Your stash rabbit leg, cabbage, half flour salt. Now a lance shard feels like a hoard. You boil cabbage with flour and salt, the pottage warm but grim, and eat the knight's clanging swords echoing in your head. Joke 3. If this is knightly valor, you're sticking to hauling straw. You bank the fire, the manor's shadow long outside, and check your stash. Nail iron scrap, woven patch, parchment lance, shard. They're scraps of a life you're clawing together, each one a fight against this world's chains. The night's strength, the court's verdict, the river's rush. They're threads in your tapestry, and you're weaving however clumsily. You crawl onto your straw bed, the straw poking through your cloak, and pull it tight. The cold's still biting, but you're free of the sentence, alive with a splintered lance to prove it. You close your eyes, the courtyard's din fading, and brace for tomorrow's grind, ready to face it with a serf's stubborn heart. You're finally free from the Lord's court sentence, but your body's paying the price, sore from hauling lance shards, and drenched from that rickety boat. The village lane's a frozen mire, snow-packed mud sucking at your crumbling shoes, and the morning air's sharp enough to cut. Your tunic's a patchwork of stains, flour fish now straw, and your cloak's more holes than wool. The straw mattress left you stiff, and your hut's smoky fire is barely keeping the cold at bay. Your stash, rabbit leg, cabbage, half flour, pinch salt is dwindling, and that lumpy nail in your belt feels like a mocking trophy. Today's not about knights or rivers. You're dodging a new threat, a witchcraft accusation. Whispers from the tavern and market have turned on you, and you're scrambling to clear your name. Grab your cloak brace for suspicious glares, and let's navigate this medieval minefield. You step into the lane, the village quieter than usual, the snow muffling the usual clatter of carts and kids. Folks are eyeing you, some subtle, some nod as you pass. It started with a rumor someone saw you muttering modern words near the well, maybe during that clumsy scribe lesson. Now the miller's wife swears her bread failed because you cursed it. It's nonsense, but in this world, nonsense can get you burned. Your cough's gone, but your heart's pounding, and every glance feels like a noose tightening. You need to find allies fast before the reeve or priest gets wind of this. Your first stop is the healer's hut, hoping her clout can help. The church looms nearby, its bells silent but ominous. You knock, and the healer opens the door, her sharp eyes scanning you like you're a bad herb. You explain the rumor, keeping your voice low, and she sighs, muttering about foolish tongues. She's been through this. Her herbs and charms walk a fine line between help and heresy. She hands you a sprig of rosemary, saying it's for protection, and tells you to talk to the tavern crowd where gossip festers. You thank her, tucking the rosemary into your belt with the nail, and head out praying she's right. The tavern's a smoky den, its air thick with ale and sweat. You slip inside, avoiding the barmaid's stare, and find a corner bench. The crowd's smaller today, winter keeping folks home. But the usual faces are here: bearded farmers, a weaver the kid from the hunt. You overhear the miller's wife, her voice sharp, retelling the bread curse story. She's milking it, claiming your strange words soured her dough. You're tempted to call her out, but that's a fast track to trouble. Instead, you approach the kid who liked you during the hunt. You offer your pinch of salt for his silence, and he nods, saying he'll vouch you're no witch. It's a start, but you need more. Here's a hard fact. Witchcraft accusations were rare, but deadly in the 14th century, often tied to bad luck or grudges. Before the later witch hunts, villages like yours blamed outsiders or eccentrics for failed crops or sick cows, with trials leaning on gossip over evidence. You're the outsider, and that bread rumor's sticking like mud. You're not cursed, but you're not safe either. You try talking to the weaver, offering to haul wool again to win him over. He's skeptical, but agrees to spread a good word, saying you're just clumsy, not cursed. You're racking up debts, Weaver Tanner, now this, but it's better than a trial. A quirky tidbit: some villagers wore amulets like crosses or herbs to ward off curses. Your rosemary sprig's doing double-duty protection, and a faint hope it'll calm the crowd. You spot a woman with a cross pendant whispering about you, and you flash the sprig, hoping it signals innocence. Historians still argue whether these amulets were faith or fear-driven. Either way, you're clutching yours like a lifeline. The tavern's getting rowdier, a dice game starting, and you slip out needing air and a plan. The miller's wife is trouble, and you're not sure how to shut her down without making it worse. You head to the well where gossip flows like water. A group of women are there, hauling buckets, their chatter pausing as you approach. You fill your pitcher, keeping your eyes down, and drop a casual comment about helping the healer. One woman, the ale sharer from the festival, nods, saying she trusts the healer's judgment. It's a small win, but the others are silent, their stares heavy. You're starting to feel the village's pulse. Every rumor's a spark, and you're tinder. You need to act normal, so you offer to carry a bucket for the ale woman. She accepts, and you haul at your arms, aching, but your heart lighter. Allies matter even if they're few. Joke 1. If you're a witch, your only spell is summon bad pottage. You trudge back to the lane, the rosemary scent faint under your cloak's stink. The village is watching every step. Every word could tip the scales. You decide to visit the church, hoping the priest's influence can douse the rumor. The stone walls feel colder today, the nave empty except for a boy sweeping. The priest's there, polishing a candlestick, and you approach your Middle English shaky. You mention the healer's support, framing yourself as a hard-working serf, not a curse caster. He listens, his face unreadable, and says he'll pray on it. It's not a promise, but it's not a condemnation, so you take it. Back outside, the snow's lighter, but the chill's deep, your shoes soggy. You're starting to hate this village's suspicion, its quickness to point fingers. The tavern's tales, the court's verdict, the mill's dust. They're all threads in a web, and you're caught. You try one more move, helping the blacksmith, whose not hopeless comment might carry weight. His forge is glowing, and you offer to haul coal again, mentioning the rumor casually. He grunts, saying the miller's wife talks too much, and promises to back you if asked. Another ally, another debt, but you're building a shield, however flimsy. Joke 2. If this is village drama, you're ready for a medieval mute button. You head back to your hut, the manor's shadow long and cold. Inside, you bank the fire, the smoke stinging your eyes, and check your stash. Rabbit leg cabbage, half-flour salt, rosemary sprig. You're too rattled for pottage, so you nibble the rabbit leg. It's meat, tough, but rich. The warmth of the fire and food calms you, but the rumor's still out there, a ghost like the tavern's night tale. You're weaving allies, kid, weaver, healer, maybe blacksmith, but it's a fragile net, and the miller's wife is a sharp blade. You step outside, needing to move. The lane's quiet, the snow muffling the world, but you feel eyes everywhere. You pass the well again, where a kid's whispering about your curse. You ignore him clutching your nail and rosemary, and keep walking. The village's rhythm fields, mills, boats. Now rumors keeps turning, and you're fighting to stay afloat. You're not a witch, but you're not safe, and every glance reminds you of that. Joke 3. If you're casting spells, your only magic is surviving this mud. You return to your hut bank, the fire again, and crawl onto your straw bed, the rosemary's faint scent, a small comfort. The accusation's still out there, but you're alive with allies, and a nail, ready to face tomorrow's whispers, with a serf's stubborn heart. You're still on edge from the witchcraft whispers, clutching that rosemary sprig like it's your only defense against the village's suspicious glares. The morning's crisp, the lane, a frozen sludge under a pale sky, the snow lighter, but still dusting your cloak. Your tunic's a grimy mosaic of flour, fish, and mud, and your shoes are barely holding together, stuffed with straw that's more itch than insulation. Your hut's smoky fire and lumpy mattress are no comfort, and your stash rabbit leg scraps a wilting cabbage, half a pinch of flour, a dash of salt is grim. The nail in your belt, your blacksmith blunder feels heavier today. You're not dodging rumors or hauling goods. Now you're joining a pilgrim's trek, a holy march with devout travelers to a nearby shrine. Grab your cloak brace for sore feet, and let's walk the medieval road of faith. You join the pilgrims at the church, where a small group, maybe 20, gathers under the stone tower. The priest's there, his black robe stark against the snow, leading prayers in Latin that hum like a distant song. The crowd's a mix, weathered farmers, a weaver's wife, a boy from the mill, all bundled in cloaks and carrying sticks or small packs. You're here partly because the healer suggested it's showing faith might douse those witch rumors, and partly because you're desperate for purpose after the court's grind. The priest eyes you his nod grudging, and you fall in line, your heart heavy, but your steps steady. The trek starts, the village fading as you follow a winding path through snowy fields. The air's sharp, your breath clouding, and the cold bites through your holy shoes. The pilgrims chant, their voices soft, but steady, a rhythm that keeps you moving. You're no believer, but you mimic their steps, clutching your stick from the bandit patrol like it's a holy relic. The path's rough, frozen ruts, patches of ice, and you're slipping your cloak, catching on brambles. The weaver's wife steadies you, her smile kind, and you're grateful, remembering her nod at the well. Allies are gold, especially with those whispers lingering. Here's a hard fact. Pilgrimages were a big deal in the 14th century, with folks traveling to shrines for healing, forgiveness, or favor. Local treks like this one to a saint's relic, a day's walk away, were common for peasants who couldn't afford Canterbury or Jerusalem. You're headed to a chapel with a supposed saint's bones said to cure fevers. Your cough's gone, but you're praying for a miracle to clear your name. The group's pace is steady, and you're struggling to keep up, your legs aching from the river and mill. The boy from the mill hums a tune, and you join in, your voice shaky but blending with the chant. A quirky tidbit: some pilgrims carried badges, metal pins from shrines, as proof of their journey or charms against evil. You notice the weaver's wife has one, a tiny cross, pinned to her cloak, glinting in the weak sun. You're jealous, your rosemary sprig feeling flimsy in comparison. Historians still argue whether these badges were devotional or just souvenirs. Either way, you want one, if only to signal you're not a witch. You're starting to feel the trek's weight, not just physical, but spiritual. The priest's prayers, the group's chants, the snow's bite, they're binding you to this world, one step at a time. The path narrows, dipping into a forest, its shadows cool and quiet. You're wary, the bandit patrol's memory fresh, but the group's presence is a shield. The priest leads a prayer for safety, and you mutter along, hoping it covers rumors too. You're tasked with carrying a communal water skin, its weight sloshing against your hip. You share it with the boy who's chatty now, talking about the shrine's miracles. He says his sister was healed there last year, and you nod, not sure if it's faith or placebo. You're just glad he's not whispering about curses. You offer him a pinch of your salt, a small bribe, and he grins, your ally count ticking up. The forest opens to a hill, the chapel visible, a small stone building, its roof dusted with snow. The group kneels, and you follow the frozen ground, numbing your knees. The priest chants, and you're swept into the moment, the cold fading as the group's faith hums. Inside the chapel's dim smelling of wax and damp stone. The relic, a bone in a wooden box, sits on an altar, and you're shuffled forward to touch it. Your fingers brush the box, and you feel nothing but cold wood, but you fake reverence, aware of the priest's eyes. Joke 1, if this bone's holy, your nail's a sacred artifact. You step back, the crowd's murmurs, a soft blanket around you. The return trek's harder, the cold deeper as the sun dips. You're exhausted, your shoes soaked, your cloak dragging in the snow. The weaver's wife shares a crust of bread, and you devour it, the grit, familiar, but welcome. You're starting to see the pilgrimage's point, not just faith, but community. A chance to prove you're one of them. The boy chatters about the tavern's ghost tale, and you laugh, feeling lighter. The witch rumor feels distant here, drowned by chance and shared steps. You're not safe yet, but you're closer your rosemary sprig and borrowed faith holding the whispers at bay. Joke 2. If this is spiritual cardio, you're ready for a medieval nap. The village comes into view, its huts huddled under snow. The priest dismisses the group with a blessing, and you slip away, the manor's shadow looming as always. You stop by the well, rinsing your hands in icy water, and overhear a woman praising your pilgrimage effort. It's a small win, but you'll take it every nod. Chips away at the miller's wife's cursed story. Back at your hut, you collapse by the fire, the smoke stinging your eyes. Your stash rabbit scraps. Cabbage flour salt is grim, but you're too tired for pottage. You nibble the rabbit, its meat, tough but warm, and feel a flicker of strength. The pilgrimage has left you sore, but hopeful. You're weaving allies, weaver's wife, millboy healer, against the village's suspicion. The court sentence is done, the mill's dust settled, the river's rush faded. Now this trek's another thread in your tapestry, tying you to this world's faith and fears. You bank the fire, the chapel's bone, lingering in your mind, and check your stash. Nail iron scrap, woven patch parchment, lance shard, rosemary. They're scraps of a life you're clawing together, one frozen step at a time. The manor looms, but you're here alive with a pilgrimage under your belt. Joke 3. If you're a holy traveler, the village is hiring for soggy saint. You crawl onto your straw bed, the straw poking through your cloak, and pull it tight. The cold's still biting, but you're part of the village's pulse, now ready for tomorrow's grind, with a serf's stubborn heart. You're still weary from the pilgrim's trek, your legs aching from trudging through snow, and your cloak heavy with damp. The village lane's a frozen quagmire, the morning air sharp enough to sting your face, and the manor's shadow looms like a silent judge. Your tunic's a grimy patchwork, your shoes crumbling despite the straw stuffing, and your straw mattress left you stiff as ever. The witch rumors have quieted thanks to your pilgrimage, but they're not gone lingering like the faint rosemary scent in your belt. Your stash rabbit scraps, cabbage dregs flour, pinch salt is nearly spent, and that lumpy nail's your only weapon. Today's not about faith or labor. You're reflecting on this medieval ordeal, yearning for modern comforts, as the village's grind wears you down. Grab your cloak brace for wistful thoughts, and let's wander through your muddy reality. You step into the lane, the village waking slowly under a pale sky. Smoke curls from huts, kids chase a stray hen, and the reeve's voice barks somewhere distant. You're done with the court sentence, the mill's dust, the river's leaks, but you're not free. The village is a cage mudwork suspicion, and you're dreaming of a hot shower, Wi-Fi, and a burger that doesn't taste like regret. You trudge toward the well, needing water to wash the sleep from your face, but the cold's biting, and your hands are already numb. You're starting to feel like a ghost, haunting this world with your modern mind, out of place but stuck. At the well, you fill your pitcher, the icy water splashing your tunic. A woman's there, the ale sharer from the festival, and she nods her smile warmer now. Your pilgrimage helped maybe, but you're still the outsider, your strange words and clumsy ways, a quiet risk. You rinse your face, the cold, shocking you awake and think of your old life coffee Netflix, a bed that doesn't stab you. Here, it's pottage, and prayers, and you're barely keeping up. You're not starving, not sick, but you're worn the village's rhythm grinding you down like the windmill stones. Here's a hard fact. Medieval life was a slog with serfs working endless days for survival, not dreams. By the 14th century, most lived to their 40s, worn out by labor hunger and disease. You're feeling that now every task from hauling wood to dodging rumors is a fight to stay alive. You're young, maybe, but this world ages you fast. Your hands calloused, your back bent. You're dreaming of a thermostat, a fridge, a world where sanitary isn't a fantasy. The well's water is clear, but you're still wary of its metallic tang, a far cry from a cold soda. You head back to your hut, the lane's mud sucking at your shoes. Inside the fire's weak, the smoke stinging your eyes, and you kneel to coax it alive, your fingers trembling. Your stash is grim, rabbit scraps, a cabbage leaf flour, and salt, barely enough for one meal. You're tempted to eat the rabbit, but you save it boiling the cabbage with flour and salt for another sad pottage. It's warm, at least, and you eat slowly, savoring the faint salt kick. You're starting to miss things you never valued: flush toilets, clean socks, a chair that doesn't wobble. Joke 1. If this is simple living, you're ready to complicate it with indoor plumbing. A quirky tidbit some peasants believed dreaming of bread meant good fortune, a sign of plenty. You've been dreaming of pizza, which probably doesn't count, but it's keeping you sane. Historians still argue whether these dream omens were widespread or just tavern talk. Either way, you're clinging to your pizza visions like a lifeline. You're not sure if you're homesick or just exhausted, but every creak of the hut, every poke of the straw, reminds you of what you've lost. You're surviving, but it's a grind. And the village's chains, Lord Reeve rumors, feel tighter every day. You step outside, needing air. The lane's quieter, the snow holding off, but the cold's relentless. Your cloak no match for it. You pass the tavern, its warmth tempting, but you're out of bribes and not ready for more gossip. The blacksmith's forge glows, the mill's sails creak, and the church's tower stands like a sentinel. You've woven through this world, fields, boats, knights, pilgrims, and each step's left you tougher, but more tired. You're not the serf you were that first day lost in the muck, but you're not home either. You're caught a modern mind in a medieval trap, yearning for a way out. You stop by the forest's edge, where you hunted the trees, silent under snow. You think of the bandit patrol the tavern's ghost tales, and wonder if escape's possible. Run, and you're a fugitive. Stay, and you're a serf. Neither's freedom, but staying's safer for now. You clutch your nail its weight a small anchor and head back to the lane. The manor looms its walls, mocking your dreams of microwaves and mattresses. You're not giving up, but you're tired, and the village's pulse work, faith-fear, beats on dragging you with it. Joke 2, if this is time travel, you're demanding a refund from the universe. Back at your hut, you bank the fire, the smoke curling like your fading hopes. Your stash, nail iron scrap, woven patch parchment lance shard. Rosemary is a sad museum of your journey. You're not the same person who woke in that straw bed, confused and soft. You've hauled grain-faced court, dodged curses, walked with pilgrims. Each scar, each debt is a lesson. But you're yearning for a world where survival doesn't mean mud and hunger. You eat the last rabbit scraps, the meat tough but vital, and sip water, the cold glass a faint echo of home. The village settles into evening, the lane hushed the manor's shadow long. You're alone, the fire's crackle your only company, and you're reflecting on what's kept you going. Grit, luck, a few kind faces. The alewoman, the mill boy, the healer. They're threads in your tapestry holding you together. You're not a hero, not a witch, just a serf with a nail and a dream of hot coffee. Joke 3. If you're a medieval survivor, the village is hiring for stubborn dreamer. You crawl onto your straw bed, the straw gentler now, or maybe you're just used to it, and pull your cloak tight. Your breath slows the hut's smoky warmth, wrapping you like a soft blanket. The village fades its mud and cold, slipping into the shadows as the fire's embers glow, their faint crackle. A lullaby. You're not home, but you're here alive, your heart steady despite the grind. The manor's shadow, the reeves scowl the whispers. They're distant now, softened by the quiet night. Your nail, your scraps, your small victories rest under the mattress, a testament to your stubborn heart. The snow outside falls gently, the world hushed, and you're drifting, the straws poke a faint echo. Let the village sleep. Let the cold wait. You're safe for now, wrapped in the glow of survival, your dreams carrying you to a softer place. Sleep, weary serf, and let tomorrow's burdens rest. Sweet dreams.